For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 City Council. I'm Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is May 20th, 2025. It is 10:15 a.m. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings which began in April and will run through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record, which we'll be doing at the beginning of this hearing following the panelist presentation. You can do this in several ways. Attend one of our hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at the end of each departmental hearing and also have 2 hearings dedicated to public testimony. The following hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. You give testimony in person, here in the chamber, or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. It will be taken at the beginning of this hearing following the panelist presentation. Individuals will be called on in the order which they have signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov or by emailing karishma.chauhan@boston.gov. That is karishma.chauhan@boston.gov. You will receive the Zoom link. Your name will be added to the list. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation and/or residence and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. You can also email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. And then lastly, you can submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify, please visit the City Council budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on dockets number 0822 through 0830 and docket number 0845. The FY26 budget for the Parks and Recreation Department and the Parkman Fund. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 9, 2025. Today I'm joined by my council colleagues in order of arrival, Council Flynn, Council Murphy, Council Braden, and Council Pepin. I will now like to turn it over to today's panelists to introduce themselves and to dive into their presentation. The floor is now yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Worrell. Happy to be here. Brian Sweat, Chief Climate Officer for the City of Boston and currently the Interim Commissioner of Parks and Rec. I'll invite my colleagues to introduce themselves and then we have a brief presentation. I'll start on my right.
Darlene Buffer, Director of Human Resources.
Kathy Baker-Eclipse, Director of the Capital Plan.
Good morning, Nate Hinchliff, Director of Park Maintenance.
Steve Bickett, Deputy Commissioner.
Tracy Lee, Director of Finance and Procurement.
So you all have this in your packets and can be shared, so I'll be brief, but wanted to begin with some highlights of recent accomplishments over the last fiscal year for the Parks and Rec Department on both the operating and the capital side. First and foremost, excited that we are fully staffed now in the Design and Construction Division. As folks know, we've been making headway on lots of capital projects, and one of the choke points aren't just money, it's also about being able to have the staff to run these projects from a PM perspective. So excited to be fully staffed for the first time in a long time at Design and Construction. And we're on track to be fully staffed with our Franklin Park Natural Areas crew, which is exciting. And this is, as folks hopefully remember, a crew designated to Franklin Park, but with urban wilds and ecological expertise to be able to directly bring that park back into preeminence from an ecological standpoint. We continue to seek outside funding beyond this process to support both our operations and capital. So we've had significant success not only through the city's CPA program, but also the state's park grant program and the federal government's LWCF grant program, again, to augment our program of work and be able to deliver for residents of Boston. One of the more significant projects that we broke ground on that included a variety of different capital streams was our waterfront resiliency project at Ryan Playground in Charlestown. That work is underway. And we have completed park renovations throughout the city, and we'll continue to have those ribbon cuttings and turn over parks and then select new ones for renovations throughout. We're using our acquisitions fund to acquire land for permanent protection. And 2 recent highlights were the Sharon Woods addition and the Eggleston Square Peace Garden through our acquisition fund. Lastly, a lot of the work of this group and the Parks and Rec team is on delivering programming, on inviting folks to use our parks in active and passive ways. We had impact conservatively over the last fiscal year on 35,000 residents participating in one form or another of programs that the City of Boston facilitates, be they music, cultural, historical, recreational, or otherwise. Some numbers, because I love numbers, in terms of delivery. Permits for events was up almost 25% in the fiscal year over the past fiscal year to over 5,000 permits for different types of events. Burials performed in terms of capacity was up materially, and the cemeteries group is working really well. Contracts awarded for both operating and capital projects was up significantly. Our park rangers, who as folks know are largely in a program delivery mode now, increased their programming significantly, interpretive programs across the city, and obviously we want to be prepared for the summer of 2026 when we anticipate lots of new visitors and returning visitors to Boston. This is not able to be accomplished without significant both permanent FTEs as well as our seasonal workers. So we onboard over 100 seasonal workers each spring to get ready for the summer season, in addition to staffing out the full FTEs at Parks and Rec. Golf is more popular than ever in Boston. There are 2 municipal courses. We cracked 100,000 rounds of golf last year, which is pretty remarkable on those courses. George Wright had some very positive press, but one of the nation's best municipal golf courses in the country. So excited to have those courses, really delivering on their vision for the city. Our horticultural staff planted over 30,000 spring flowering bulbs citywide. That is a remarkable effort and really contributes as folks drive through the city in the spring, seeing spring arrive with the color that our flowering bulbs provide. And then lastly, a couple of grants, one of which came through the City Council. We worked with Sunflower and Beautification Grant Program to get our public spaces and new spaces contributing to environmental sustainability. In terms of recreation, almost 5,000 youth were hosted through our 5 sports center sites in Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, and Dorchester. And not only are these programs, participatory for the youth, they're also employment opportunities. So over 150 youth were employed by the delivery of these programs. The Mayor's Cup continues to be extremely popular. People want that title of Best in Boston. And the notoriety that it commands. We hosted 425 individual Mayor Cups games across the last fiscal year in everything from baseball to street hockey, ice hockey, flag football, soccer, tennis, and cross country. Archery is a remarkably popular sport these days. It is making a resurgence across the age spectrum, which has been really interesting. It is popular amongst youth and teens, and almost 3,000 youth participated, as well as it is particularly popular amongst our age-strong community. We now run an ABC program specifically around archery for seniors in Boston. Our free winter, summer, and fall fitness classes, in terms of being active recreation and focusing on people's health and opportunities, touched over 5,000 Bostonians and 560 hours of virtual and in-person classes. I think we should get some type of Fitbit trackers to see how many miles the folks are doing on tracking, but maybe in a different administration. Offered citywide recreational clinics and league games throughout communities together, serving over 2,500 individuals and youth. So really, the attention has been on our activation of the parks to make sure that people have access and opportunity. From an ecological standpoint, in terms of the trees, planted almost 2,000 trees in 2024. A lot of this is weather dependent, so we had a very good 2024 in terms of opportunities to plant trees. We're on track to plant 1,200 street trees this spring. And then for folks who are aware, we have a spring and a fall season, and we do another 600 plus in the fall after the hot weather has left. Street tree pruning has been a priority over the last several years as we've built out our urban forestry team. The easy part, in all honesty, is planting the trees. It's keeping mature trees healthy and keeping that canopy coverage healthy. We now have a fully staffed urban forestry team and are getting to each street tree every 3 to 5 years, which is excellent, either directly or through contracts. This is a 100% increase over the past average of 2,500 trees a year. So they are performing really efficiently. Hopefully you guys are hearing positive feedback from the neighbors when they're coming out there. We want to be pruning trees, not cutting trees down where we can, and keeping them pruned allows them to be healthy for longer. We're continuing to deal with ash tree borer and the emerald ash borer So we're injecting over 1,000. We have injected over 1,000 mature ash trees, or we will this spring, and that's an ongoing battle against that blight. We responded to over 10,000 urban forestry calls. So these are calls for dead limbs or limbs that have fallen, and responded to 99% of those tree emergencies within a 24-hour period. And we have continued to staff up with support of the council in terms of arborist and tree warden positions. And then in terms of animal care and control, as folks know, the Boston Animal Shelter resides in the Parks and Rec Department. They had a very busy year as well. Over 11,000 pets were licensed. This was over a 10% increase from 2024. We issued 20 kennel licenses to private sector kennels, responded to almost 8,000 calls, issued a number of citations, hosted a number of rabies clinics and helped vaccinate and provide low-cost rabies vaccines or free for almost 600 pets, and provided care for almost 900 cats and dogs and small pets. Trying to get those that are able into adoption. A lot of the animals we care for are court involved and involved in court cases where we're just the stewards and care for those animals. We joined the Massachusetts Animal Shelter Coalition, and I would give a shout out in particular to animal care. Two things. One, there was a great article in the fall that hopefully folks saw about how they're able to work and provide this absolutely critical function for residents in Boston under very challenging circumstances. This past winter in particular, the bird flu hit Boston particularly hard in terms of geese and other waterfowl, and animal care stepped up, knowing that we had to be able to humanely euthanize many different birds during that period so that they weren't struggling in the park and causing challenges to park users. So they play a critical function for the city of Boston. I will now turn it over to Kathy Baker-Clips to walk through some of our design construction, both completions over the last year and projects in the pipeline.
Thank you, Chief. We're looking forward to beginning construction on several projects across the city in FY26, including Ringer Playground in Alston, Billings Field in West Roxbury, which will include improved playing fields with better drainage and lighting, courts, a new street hockey court, playground improvements, and adding a walking loop around the fields. We're also looking forward to breaking ground at McKinney Playground in Brighton and at the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway in East Boston. That project will create, did I skip something? Sorry, we'll go back to that. Sorry. Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry for that. So design construction continues to be capital projects, capital improvements in our parks and playgrounds. We're continuing work at Copley Square Park in the Back Bay and anticipate fully reopening that park at the end of this year. We're also continuing work at Ryan Playground in Charlestown to create a climate resilient park with ball fields, play area, splash pad, and new court features. We broke ground. Oh my gosh, I am sorry.
You can go to the next one. There you go. Now you're on the right.
No, I'm on that one? Okay. I'm sorry. We broke ground at Clifford Playground last month to build a state-of-the-art multi-sport facility and the new basketball courts, new tennis courts, new play area, splash pad, and a dog park. We're wrapping up construction at Walsh Playground in Dorchester with fields, play area, and courts, as well as looking forward to breaking ground at Franklin Park Bear Dens later this summer to provide some stabilization to the degrading features there. Am I on the right one? Okay. In FY26, we will continue to prioritize street tree planting program to expand the city's tree canopy. We're also continuing to advance the design of Moakley Park Phase 1, which will design climate resiliency features in the park, as well as a premier baseball field and passive areas for the community to come together. We're also continuing to collaborate with the planning department on a study to better understand the shadow impacts of development on parkland, and look forward to wrapping that up in the next couple of months. Okay, now getting ready for construction at Ringer Playground in Alston, Billings Field in West Roxbury, which I touched on a minute ago, McKinney and the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway, which This project will create a blue-green solution for the stormwater and storm surge from the harbor, being able to accommodate a small amount of, or a reasonable amount of stormwater that's coming in while allowing people to traverse through the park at the same time. Our increased staffing is allowing us to advance some design projects that have been on the shelf, like at Townfield in Dorchester, where many of our colleagues are today. We're also continuing the design work at the Franklin Park Overlook Ruins that will be the future home of the Elma Lewis Playhouse, and continuing design work for the Franklin Park Circuit Drive safety and drainage improvements. We're also anticipating that the work on Christopher Columbus Park, which includes climate resiliency work, will begin this year, and that work is becoming increasingly urgent as conditions and the climate changes. Because of the backlog of work, there aren't a large number of new projects for FY26, but those that we did include are important and will help the overall facility conditions of our parks and playgrounds. The Poplar Gate Path in the Arnold Arboretum is a pathway paving project that will complement the new Poplar Gate at the corner of Bussey and Flora that the Arnold Arboretum recently completed. We also do want to continue making playground improvements across the city, but especially at Christopher Lee Playground in South Boston, which is one of the oldest playgrounds not currently in the capital plan. We also included a program this year to begin specifically addressing some retaining wall repairs across the city. There are some of those are degrading conditions that can be surprises, but some of them are just in general decline and can be stabilized with a little less effort now. So being able to be proactive and reactive to these conditions will improve park conditions and the structural stability and appearance citywide. I'll turn it back over to Chief for our goals.
Thank you, Kathy. So just at a high level in terms of thematically, our goals for the next fiscal year, first and foremost, to continue to leverage these city assets to create a climate resilient waterfront. You've seen us break ground and deliver parks as part of our coastal resilience infrastructure in particular, as well as dealing with stormwater. Ryan Playground and Moakley are two prime examples of these going forward. Continuing to improve our neighborhood parks, like our work in Ronan Playground in Dorchester and Fidelis Way Park in Brighton, being able to deliver a high-quality experience to residents and users. We want to continue to source outside funding opportunities at the city, state, and federal level where possible to augment our operating budget through the city and collaborate with our other city partners in how we deliver these projects, making sure that we are reinforcing the equitable procurement, subcontracting opportunities, and vendor diversity. With the overall mission to really continue to deliver a clean, green, and safe open space environment. Some of the particular focus areas within those programmatic goals, one is beginning to deliver the capital projects identified in the Franklin Park Action Plan, including the Shattuck Tennis Court expansion, which we expect to begin later this summer and hopefully available next spring. This will allow us to actually host the different types of events through BPS. We don't have enough tennis courts in the same location to host tournaments at the moment, so this will be a game changer. The Franklin Park Action Plan, continuing our design work on the Overlook and the Circuit Drive safety drainage improvements will continue, and we're making progress in our search for an executive director of the Franklin Park system. The Boston Common Master Plan as well is getting increased attention around delivery, looking at expanding the restroom facilities, and then teeing up design work at the Tadpole Playground. The Shaw Accessibility Ramp project should be completed in the Mayor's Walk and Parkman Bandstand. Cognizant of increased visitation for next summer. So we are trying to only start projects near term that we can complete so that when we have an inundation of visitors to our downtown parks during the 250th celebrations, we are ready to receive them. With that, happy to take questions on that and anything that we didn't cover from the full team here, and look forward to engaging on past and future Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your service to the city. We will now have a round of public testimony. You can testify either in person or via Zoom. If you'd like to testify virtually, please sign up in advance using the link below. After you have signed up, you'll be provided with the Hearing Zoom link. Please make sure you are signed into Zoom with the full name you signed up with to help us call on you appropriately. If you'd like to testify in person, please sign up on the sheet near the chamber entrance, and when your name is called to testify, Please step forward and introduce yourself into the microphone. Participants will be called on in order which they have signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. We will start with Mark, and then June, and then followed by Rebecca, and then we'll go online.
Hello, I'm Mark Freudenberger. Thanks again for the presentation this morning by Parks and Recreation, really very fascinating. I'm here today on behalf of a coalition of individuals and organizations dedicated to the care and enhancement of the Emerald Necklace, and particularly the Jamaica Pond in Olmsted Park. We express the shared and coordinated views of the Jamaica Pond Association, the Friends of Jamaica Pond, and the Jamaica Neighborhood Council. We're a collective voice advocating for the improvement of the beloved and widely used pathways, forests, open spaces, and playing fields surrounding Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park. We'd like particularly to express to Boston Parks our profound and sincere appreciation for the invaluable and often unsung contributions to Boston. It's really very remarkable, as we heard this morning. We're particularly delighted with the significant improvements in the fens, and we look forward to being part of a public consultations on future enhancements at Daisy Field in Olmsted Park. So the specific asks that we're presenting today are the following. Our campaign specifically requests that the Boston Parks capital or operation budget include a supplemental allocation of approximately $50,000 to fund a comprehensive technical assessment of the maintenance needs in the heavily used areas surrounding Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park. We appreciate the focus on Franklin Park. It's wonderful, but it's now time to start thinking around Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park. The assessment should result in a detailed plan of action and budget that addresses the following key issues. Number one, we are very concerned about significant erosion along the pathways and embankments contributing to sedimentation in Jamaica Pond, Ward's Pond, and Leverett Pond. Number two, as we see throughout the city, the spread of invasives like Japanese knotweed is a serious issue. Three, as has been alluded to already this morning, the deterioration of the aging tree canopy throughout the city is an issue, and particularly in the Emerald Necklace and around Jamaica Pond and Emerald and the Olmsted Park. And finally, number four, there is a proliferation of informal pathways that threaten the health of trees and shrubs, not only around Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park, but other parts of the Emerald Necklace. So to conclude, we really hope that this technical assessment that we're proposing for about $50,000 can be completed soon and serve as a foundation for the Boston Parks, and in partnership with our coalition to mobilize the expertise and funding in the future to address both immediate and long-term maintenance priorities. A technical assessment and action plan, as the Parks Department and City Council has done elsewhere in the city, is essential for developing priorities and funding opportunities. We hope that a technical plan can be developed either through a qualified consulting firm, as Boston Parks oftentimes does, or even by an internal interdepartmental team within Boston Parks and other departments. So finally, on behalf of the Campaign for Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park, we thank you for your thoughtful considerations of our request. We recognize that this is a supplemental request that does not fit into the current capital or operational plan for this year. But if it's possible to start an assessment of what needs to be done in the future, we think that this will set the foundations for long-term funding as well as work in these two important places. Thanks a lot, and really appreciate the listening to our concerns. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. June, followed by Rebecca.
Hey, good morning, City Councilors and the Parks and Rec Department. My name is June, and thank you for this opportunity to make this public testimony. I am a resident of Eggleston Square and an active park and rec advocate, and also a staff member at the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. Most recently, I had the privilege to attend the Mass Fish Wildlife Annual Trout Stocking. It was great to see Chief Sweat there participating and other park staff as well, as this is a very awesome way to really appreciate Jamaica Pond and all the waterways inside and around the Emerald Necklace. As much as the parks and ponds support our recreational needs, the park and ponds also need our support for the maintenance and restoration needs as well. And there's a lot of concerns not only around Jamaica Pond, but throughout the Emerald Necklace regarding erosion, and I hope that this is something that can be really addressed because of the various environmental impacts that would deteriorate the beauty of the parks and ponds, throughout the Emerald Necklace. And really just addressing, not just the parks, but also the waterways, Muddy River, Ward's Pond, Olmsted Park. There's a lot of different erosion concerns that are happening throughout the necklace. So definitely just pointing out Mark earlier, really finding funding or figuring out a way to really address this before it gets to a bigger problem. And so another thing I just want to add is on the state of Massachusetts Public Health Freshwater Fish Consumption website indicates that you could only eat 1 trout or fish a month from Jamaica Pond. And I'm not too sure if a lot of citizens know that. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of PFAS chemicals, which is a group of man-made chemicals that have been used in various industrial and consumer productions, such as fertilization, any other, like maybe even leached oil from the cars and the parkways is just another form. And so I do hope that once I am much, much, much older, that this is an advocacy that we need to continue doing, and hopefully it's baked into the Parks and Rec budget or the city's budget to really address some of the environmental concerns that are happening around the parks, ponds, and the Emerald Necklace. And thank you for this time.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca McKevitz, and I'm the Director of Capital Projects and Parks Care with the Friends of the Public Garden. I would like to thank the Mayor and City Council for their continued investments in the downtown parks and the city resources that have been brought to the downtown and Brewer Plaza area of the Common in recent months. It is an honor to be here today to discuss several key capital funding initiatives crucial for our downtown parks, for which we seek your invaluable support. The historic tool shed within the public garden is currently in a state of severe disrepair and in need of urgent attention. While the design work has been complete for over a year, construction on the project has stalled. The renovation of this rundown structure would result in a total transformation by increasing usable space and efficiency for the Parks Department, who operate out of this building throughout the year. Funding has been allocated to the project in the city's capital budget, so now it just needs to be prioritized for implementation with the necessary project management staff dedicated within city departments to move it forward. We're grateful for the city's commitment to helping fund the temporary restrooms on the Boston Common this year and the inclusion of another $100,000 in funding in the budget for next year as well. The Friends have spent $1.5 million on the temporary restroom trailer located on the parade ground since 2018, which was used by 120,000 park visitors in 2024 alone. This high visibility amenity is clearly in great demand and is the kind of basic facility that allows people to come and enjoy a day of activities in downtown Boston. With funds for the seasonal restroom now exhausted, time is of the essence to design and construct a new permanent restroom for such a critical park facility consistent with the Boston Common Master Plan. We are aware that the initial proposed budget does not include funding for a downtown park administrator, which was identified as a key recommendation in the Boston Common Master Plan. The Friends will continue to advocate for the creation of this position. We believe these key spaces in the heart of Boston require dedicated personnel who can help ensure proper coordination across the many institutions and agencies who have a role in the activation, management, and care of these spaces. In addition to the specific needs previously identified, we respectfully request a 1% allocation of the city's annual capital and operational budget to Boston's public park system. The additional funding is crucial to enhancing the turf, trees, recreational facilities, and new infrastructure that will make Boston's parks more climate resilient and more accessible to all. We would like to express our appreciation for the city's ongoing support of the projects currently identified for funding, as well as those in the design phase in the 3 parks, including the accessibility improvements at the Shaw Memorial, renovation of the Tadpole Playground area, design work for the rehabilitation of the Mayor's Walk, funding for an engineering assessment of the Public Garden Lagoon Bridge, and funding for construction of improvements to the Kenmore block of the Commonwealth Avenue Mall. Importantly, and subject to the concurrence of your office and the Parks and Recreation Commissioner, we are prepared to contribute project management assistance to any number of potential Boston Common capital project initiatives to expedite their implementation. These 3 downtown parks are the most heavily used in the city, and this year in particular, the parks will take center stage during the Revolution 250 events and programs, bringing even more visitors to enjoy Boston's historic and world-class parks. Thank you for your ongoing support of these essential places in Boston. The Friends is proud to partner with the city to help ensure these parks represent who we are and what we value as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now transition to virtual testimony. If we could bring forward both Caroline and Alex. And then, Caroline, the floor is now yours. The floor is yours. Caroline? Alex? Let's go. All right, we'll go in person testimony while we get the virtual testimony going. Sarah?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Freeman, JP, and I'm both on the neighborhood council. I live on the Arbor Way, which is a DCR parkway, so you don't have direct concerns there. I'm part of the Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park Coalition, so I'll save time by saying I second what Mark said and what June said about the emerald necklace, and take my time to say, hearing what Chief Sweat described and Kathy, all that the parks do, its department does, it's remarkable that they do it with less than 1% of the budget. And so part of my message is just that please do what you can to find support. There's such a huge part of city life, especially with summer coming and programs. I know the Rose Garden Party's coming up where a lot of private funds come in, but more would be very helpful. And I do have one other citywide concern that those of you who were here last year may recall. Even though it doesn't feel very green, and I love the trees and green space, there are crumbling stone walls and structures all over. And we got a couple of them fixed in JP the past year, but I'm aware of another one at Morton Street along Franklin Park. If you're coming from Blue Hill Ave towards Forest Hills on the right, and there are many, so just raise awareness that they may not all have a friends group advocating, but the park should look like they're being well cared for and feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go back to virtual testimony. When you hear your name called, if you can accept being a panelist, so that way we could bring you forward in order for you to testify. Caroline and Alex, if you can accept the request to be promoted as a panelist. Well, feel free to send in any written testimony. Will be made part of the record. Just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilor Weber. We will now go to Councilor colleagues in order of arrival for first rounds of questions. Councilor Flynn, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the administration team that is here. Chief Sweat, are you familiar, Chief, with Tai Tung Park?
Sorry, which park?
Are you familiar with Tai Tung Park?
Not directly.
Okay. It's probably the smallest park in the city of Boston. It hasn't received any attention or care in years. I also support these wonderful and beautiful parks across the city. I've been a champion of the Boston Common as well. No one has done more work on the Boston Common than I have. But my question, Tai Tung, can we do a walk through there? Again, it's the smallest park. It's probably in the most dense community in the city, high concentration of poverty. Why has this park been forgotten?
I'm happy to take that. Hi, Councilor. We renovated that park probably in 2017.
Yeah, 2017,
like
exactly.
Yeah. So one of the challenges with that really small park is that there's not a lot of play equipment that will fit in that space. And I think we did a pilot of trying to put in artificial turf safety surfacing there. And I haven't been there in a while to check it out and see how it's aging, but I think it's definitely something that we can take a look at.
Yeah, it is aging. I think we all have a responsibility to provide a little bit more love and care into that park. You know, again, it's in the middle of probably the highest concentration of poverty in the city, and we just can't ignore it. So can we do a walkthrough over the next month or so, and whether it's in this budget or not, but I do want to deal with the Tai Tung and ensure that my constituents also receive their fair share of services.
Sure, happy to.
Okay. Yep. Chief Sweat, District 2, Chinatown, South Boston, lowest tree coverage of any city, of any neighborhood practically in the city, had a recent city council hearing on tree canopy in my district. Are you able to support more trees in Chinatown and South Boston?
Yeah, as we talked about during that hearing, one of the challenges is the intensity of the below-grade infrastructure, and particularly in Chinatown. So we are looking at ways of bringing in tree canopy coverage and other vegetation above grade. So we have, raised tree planters on order. They should be arriving later this spring, where we can actually do raised tree planters, so we can bring trees and not be restricted by what's below grade. But that is an ongoing priority of the administration, is to bring canopy coverage and vegetation to all our neighborhoods in an equitable fashion.
Right, but South Boston has 7%, Chinatown has 7%, so other neighborhoods have, 20% or 25% tree coverage. I want to make sure my constituents are also receiving their fair share of city services. Are you familiar with Sister Mary Veronica Park in South Boston?
Do you want to come on, Sister Mary?
Sure, yes. Yes, we're aware.
What's the status of that, please?
We are finalizing the purchase and sale and hoping to close later this summer.
Okay. Yeah, could I get an update on that after the hearing, maybe sometime later this week or next week from your team?
Sure.
Okay.
It is in due diligence, so we signed the paperwork in the last 2 weeks
Yeah,
for the PNS. So
we've made significant progress in the past couple of weeks, but there's still
Okay.
more process that needs to happen.
Want to say thank you to the City of Boston, the Animal and Control Group. They do a tremendous job. They had a clinic in South Boston at the Condon School over the weekend. I was at. I want to say thank you to Alexis and the team. Very professional, hardworking, and help so many pet owners. So I want to say thank you to her team. My question is off-leash parks in the city. I don't support them. I know other people do. I had a little girl in my district that was bitten by a dog. What is the overall philosophy of the City of Boston as it relates to off-leash dog parks, and how safe are they? And are you providing any assistance if there is a injury for a child, a person, if they are bitten by a dog?
I think we've had different experiences on off-leash dog parks. There's obviously one in the Boston Common that has been around for a while. There's some formal and informal. I'd invite Nate, do you want to talk about our experience on reacting to them? We don't have a formal. We try to be responsive to the community's interests and concerns. Obviously, we want to make sure that both people and animals are safe.
I just think in these wonderful parks, having dogs running amok off leash and children playing in the playground and mixing the two is not healthy, is not safe. People disagree with me, but as a father and someone that's been in this city for a long period of time, as a parent, I do think we have to have a more clearly defined rule on off-leash dog parks.
Yeah, to be clear, and then I'll invite Nate to come in. We don't have, that I'm aware of, we don't have any off-leash dog parks in the playground area of Boston Park. So
no, right, but whether it's enforced or not, or whether they get a pass and people are able to do it with a wink and a nod, I don't like that. I like a consistent rule, and I don't like off-leash dogs running around in parks.
Right, so dogs, the rule is that dogs on leashes are welcome in most of our parks, with the exception of inside play areas. There are no dogs allowed. That's a city ordinance. And we also prohibit dogs on ball fields because of a similar cleanliness issue. But dogs on leashes are welcome otherwise throughout the parks. We do have specific areas that are that dogs are allowed off leashes, dog parks, similar to the one that's on the Massport property in South Boston. But we're building one in Jamaica Plain. We have some at Peters Park. So that type of model where dogs are allowed inside the fence, off leash, that is, and people understand that when they're entering that space, it's really meant for dogs.
Yeah, the Peters Park motto, I think, is a good motto, is a good plan. It's structured, there's rules, people follow the rules for the most part.
For the most part.
But I do think there has to be a clear plan and not just a ad hoc, do what you please. I see it at Moakley Park. I do want to see more enforcement of off-leash dogs at Moakley Park. I see a lot of little kids playing in the park, right near the memorial, Vietnam Veterans Memorial, first in the nation. So I am troubled. I am troubled by that. I don't want to see another child get hurt. Mr. Chair, out of respect to my colleagues, I don't want to ask any more questions. My time is up.
Thank you, Councilor. We have figured out the virtual testimony. So Caroline, the floor is yours. If you're on mute, you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, I was on mute. You're correct. Good morning. My name is Caroline Humphrey. I am a Vice President and Counsel at Zachem Strategies, and I'm currently working with the Friends for the Boston Park Rangers Mounted Unit, and we are here respectfully requesting a budget increase for some items that we sent out a budget letter that was submitted to the record. We have also sent them to all city councilors, and our hope is to be able to sit down with each one of you to discuss how the mounted unit, Boston Park Rangers mounted unit, can be more engaged in other parts of the city, as well as a huge priority is becoming a forward-facing barn so that we can bring in students and have more of ambassadorship of education. These budgetary requests really hinge on being able to do that. In the letter we outlined, excuse me one moment. In the letter we outlined a few projects, and those projects include new stall doors, as well as drainage system, as well as refooting and regrading of the outdoor arena. The total amount really on the low end is about $40,000, and on the high end is about $55,000. These requests, we hope, are asked that the city will agree are really necessary to ensure the safety and the health of both of our rangers as well as the horses. And again, really give us an opportunity to be more engaged with the city youth is really a priority of ours. And we would really welcome the opportunity to meet with everyone to discuss it further. And again, the budget letter has been submitted to the record for everyone's reference, and I'm happy to discuss it further. That letter does include contact information. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Alex? Alex, if you can accept being promoted to panelist, that's the only way that we could bring you forward. All right. We will now go back to my council colleagues. First round of questions. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor, the floor is yours. Oh, and sorry, Councilor Braden. Just want to acknowledge Councilor Durkin and also Councilor Coletta Zapata. Councilor Braden, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Parks, one of our favourite hearings. We all love our parks. One of the big issues for our constituents in Alston Brighton at the minute is just the maintenance issues with Smithfield, Cassidy, and McKinney looks pretty good at the moment. They have a very active friends group that did a spring clean-up, and you know, it's been good. But I hear almost every week I hear complaints about Smithfield. It's one of our marquee parks, and the playing fields. The Little League are not playing there because of the state of the fields and the ball fields. So I actually was told this morning that the Little League are going to Dorchester to play Little League baseball. So I don't know what the issue is, but it seems really challenging that you know, our marquee park is not being maintained after spending, I don't know what we spent, $5 million or something on it. And we have a Little League up and going again this year, so there's a lot more scrutiny of the parks. And I think I also communicated we had a issue with Cassidy. It's still very prone to flooding. So when the high school went there for their opening game and their baseball game, they had to bail out the mound area. There was just big puddles of water, and they had to bring buckets and just bail it out. So, you know, I think just the maintenance issues are just ongoing, and we'd love to try and see if we can get some more consistency over there. We're delighted to know that I'd like an update on just times specifically for Ringer Park and McKinney, what the timelines are for those. And I think one of the issues with our parks, Rogers Park and Smithfield, is people do run the dogs off the leash and they dig holes in the ball fields, and and I think the same was happening over at Ringer Park as well. So I don't know. It's like people see a ball field and they think, well, that's a great place to run my dog. And it's to Councillor Flynn's point, it's and we do have a lovely dog park, a dog recreational space at Smith, but people don't use it. It's really befuddling. So the other question I had was really with regard to Rogers Park. It had a study, it had a master plan, and I don't know where it's at. And I totally appreciate that we have a lot of parks in the list in Alston, Brighton that need attention. But Rogers is one that I got a call from somebody in East Boston. They say they come over to Rogers to play softball, and they called my colleague in East Boston and said, "Who do I talk to about Rogers Park?" And she sent them to me. So Councillor Coletta Zapata's constituents are calling me about a park in my district because they're not happy with it. They've been playing there for 20 years and they're not happy. So I'd love an update on that, and I have other questions, but that would be a good start. Maintenance of our fields.
I'll take the Smith and Cassidy. So Smith has a few issues. Vandalism on the fields has been a big problem between, as Councillor Flynn said, the dog owners in there. So they're constantly digging large holes. I've been dealing with a lot with ONS and trying to address it and how do we solve it. I think weekly they steal the bases from there. They destroy the base areas. There's an issue also, it feels like it comes up every year that we keep on trying to address, is with the irrigation system down there, the pump system that we put in there. Consistently kind of has problems, so we keep on trying to troubleshoot that. We also have a new as in last year, a contract compliance manager. So Smith is under contract for general care. And we've been pushing our contract compliance manager to push the contractor to make sure that we're getting what the city deserves out of that contract. Cassidy, same thing. There has been a little bit of vandalism that has happened over there. We kind of have a contract issue going on that we're going to solve soon to renovate, the infield at Cassidy. I think Cassidy has come a long way in the last 2 years in the sense that, it used to flood a lot more than it did. And we've been trying to make improvements and, amendments to the soil over there to try to get it to flood a little bit less. And I think we've done a little bit better at it. We can still do better, but we're doing better at that.
I think one of the issues with these parks is they used to have a floodable space when they had ice skating in the winter. So I think that's sort of an artifact from another era when we had ice skating in our parks in the winter. Those little puddles are still there. At Cassidy, there was an issue last summer. I hope it's gotten fixed. Was the plumbing and the water fountains weren't working, and I don't know what the rule is with access to the bathrooms, because I know that folks, there was maybe some homeless folks living in the bathrooms, or I think they were closed. I don't know what the schedule is for the bathrooms.
I'll check on the plumbing issue. I believe that is solved and that's all set. The bathrooms are open, I believe, 8 o'clock every day? They're open until 8 o'clock every evening.
Yeah, open to 8, that's good. And then Rogers Park, where is it? I know, and I totally appreciate that we have a lot of parks in need of a lot of help. With Rogers, where were we at with that one, with the master plan?
Yeah, we haven't really dug into the design, but with our increased staffing, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to start getting through that backlog and really get some attention to that. It will be focused on the ball fields and the lighting, so hoping to get that unstuck and moving forward. With regards to Ringer, we've received some significant outside funding from the Harvard Alston Flex Fund and a grant from the state for the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities, the park grant. So that park grant ties us to a specific timeline where we have to be finished by the end of FY26 for construction. So we need to get that out to bid ASAP. So we've been really putting a lot of focus into getting that out to bid as quickly as possible so that we can start the construction as soon as possible and move forward with construction on that.
Very good. People are very excited that Ringer's moving.
Yeah, and that will include a dog park as well.
Yes, thank you. I have more questions, but I'll come back for another round. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. The Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee, Councilor Pepin. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the Parks Department. Thank you all so much for being here and the amazing work that you do. I'm a big fan of everything that you do across our city, but especially in my district. I'm very lucky to have some amazing parks in my area, just amazing greenery, and being able to also just build a good relationship with your departments, especially with your tree division. So just shout out to them. And I'm gonna start off by giving a quick shout out to the folks at the animal shelter, because I'm very lucky that it's based out of my district, right in Rosendale, and they do an amazing job. So I want to advocate for them to just continue to have more funding for that department. I heard that there's conversations of potentially shifting them to a bigger space in the future. I just want to advocate for that because they do deserve it. I've been inside multiple times, and it could get crowded in there, and it gets loud. And I know that the staff members just deserve to have a nice, beautiful space. So I just wanted to advocate for that. I also want to advocate for renovations of 2 parks in my district. One of them is Healy Field. I mentioned this in the capital planning budget hearing that we had, but I just want to reiterate that there is concerns about the accessibility of parks for those that are disabled. The folks in Rosno want somewhere that they can do presentations or like showcase something, and there's a lot of space in that field with 3 ballparks, and I just think that's a great idea. Would love to advocate for that. The other field in my district is Ross Field. There is flooding concerns at some of the baseball fields, but also the New Mission High School really would love to take advantage of that field. It's just up the block, and there's a good opportunity there for them to have like a strong baseball program that can play at Ross Field too. I also just want to take a moment to thank you because you did complete the baseball diamond at Almond Park, and Mr. Earl Falk was really advocating for that, so he was proud of that. But he also, Mr. Falk, he's also going to continue to advocate for stuff. And the tennis courts are cracking really badly at Almond Park. I think it's because the irrigation system is looking like they're just being lifted, and the Tenacity tennis program they run their program out of there during the summer times and springtime, so they're having some issues sometimes with tripping. So I just wanted to flag that for you all. A question for you all is, for your tree maintenance, what is your collaboration like with the Public Works Department? I had a good meeting with your tree division, but I think this was more, I had a question, but it was more of a question for higher ups. I wanted to know, like, when, let's say there's a 3-1 request that comes in and says, hey, this tree is uplifted my sidewalk and is creating a safety hazard. I'm one that wants to save the tree just because I love tree canopy, but I also have seen some sidewalks that literally look like this, and you cannot put a stroller on there, or a wheelchair can literally not go over them. What is the relationship like with Public Works there? How do you guys navigate those situations?
Yeah, I think it's strong because there's issues across the city in terms of trees uplifting sidewalks, and so we're trying to find additional ways of putting in either flexible or permeable pavement and getting much smoother elevations if there is a lift from the trees. Looking at, are certain roots able to be removed and not inhibit the health of the tree, to be able to sort of round out that surface. A lot of these are older trees that have grown up over time, and things have been built up around them, and they're looking for they're looking for water, they're looking for access to oxygen because the roots need to breathe, and they are and so it's that balance of trying to make sure that we're preventing this from being a continuing issue. When we plant new tree pits, we're able to use the latest approaches to avoid that going forward. So everything from structured soils and the right tree disbursements and how we're designing that realm that we're putting them in. Yeah. So we have less concern going forward about that. But for some of our older, more mature trees, it's an ongoing issue, and we share your interest and concern that can we have both? Can we have sidewalks that are ADA accessible and mature street trees in the realm? I don't know, Nate or Kathy, if you want to come in more on that.
I think that's accurate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
And do use 311 to, I mean, if there are places in your neighborhood, highlight them that we can, come up with a solution.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, your tree division really does step up. They actually came out to my district and saw one of the tree pits that was in bad condition. They were able to really work around there with our Public Works Department. So just shout out to them. In regards to, if there's a community member, if there's a community group that wants to take over or help spruce up a local park, what is their process for that? And I'm thinking, I'm going to use an example, Poplar Street Park. It's a very small batch of land in Roslindale, and they want to, there's a community group that wants to put up like, I don't know if to call it a vegetable garden or just, like a food forest. Mm-hmm. That's what they want to do, a food forest. That's the word I was looking for. What is the process for that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I've met with several of the community around that area and with people from the Boston Food Forest Coalition, and we've talked about what it would take to navigate something like that. That would be a different type of park maintenance and stewardship model than we have elsewhere. We don't have any food forests on property that we own. So trying to sort out what the legal and maintenance and what each party is responsible for and the capital work is something that we need to put significant thought into and sort that out before we get going on that. But it's something that could be a really positive change for that space that's really underutilized. Yeah. So I think in my inbox I have some emails that I need to respond to, and it's just so it's something that I'm aware of and we're trying to figure out, but we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way and we're being collaborative and expectations are clear on all fronts.
That's great. I would love to just officially say that I definitely recommend that idea. I think that the residents I know that they're really committed to this and they're willing to really partner up with you all.
Yeah.
I do have more questions, but I'll wait for my second round.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Councilor Weber. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a lot of questions. I think you heard from some of my constituents today. Mark and Sarah talked about Jamaica Pond. I guess what's your response to this? And when I first started in this position almost 2 years ago, I live near Jamaica Pond. It's the closest park from where I live. Spend a lot of time there. It seems like there needs to be a long-term plan for maintenance and upkeep at the pond. My predecessor, Councilor O'Malley, got a $4 million investment, and it just that was, what are we talking about, 6-7 years ago at this point. Doesn't seem like there's any plan. And I talked to Commissioner Woods, and he said, well, you could give us money for it, but in terms of getting the staff there, that would be an issue. So we heard today about a plan to get a $50,000 sort of feasibility study or something that would help us come up with a plan. What do you think about that proposal? And in general, what do you think about how to approach upkeep of the pond, Jamaica Pond, that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Councilor Weber, in general, we want maintenance and programming plans for all of our major parks, and I think we've now, one of the choke points to sort of being able to do that across the board has been staffing, and so we're happy that we've been able to staff up design and construction and the landscape division in terms of design to be able to handle more of these. So I think we'll have to look and see how quickly we could get started on something like that. I think it's obviously a highly utilized park, and it's one where we want to deal with erosion issues and plan to make it resilient to future climate changes at the same time. But I think it's on the list, and I think it's just how quickly we can move forward with the planning effort around it.
Okay, so I guess so. What I'm hearing is there is no plan at the moment, but what do you think of this $50,000 sort of hiring a consultant or at least budgeting that money to come up with like a formal plan? I mean, how do we get from here to a plan? I guess.
Yeah, I think we'll have to circle up about what we could accomplish for that, but really like what is the scope of work that makes sense as a first phase for that type of a needs assessment for the pond.
Yeah, I think studying what the additional maintenance needs are is one thing, but being able to implement it is clearly the next step after that. So I think we are trying to, in design and construction, not trying to get ahead of our maintenance colleagues and say, you need to do this, you need to do this, understanding what their limitations are and what they can and can't do in-house and what might be able to be contracted services. So I think we're trying to balance all of those pieces together but looking at what it needs. I think we have a baseline understanding of what we'd like maintenance to be, whether we're achieving that, and then what the next level of effort would be and what it would take.
How long would it take to come up? I mean, we're not, again, like this isn't about actually seeing changes. How long would it, so you agree with me that we could use a plan first, I think. How long would it take to come up with a plan for Jamaica Pond?
If the design construction team is leading it, we might be able to prioritize it in 26, but we have to look at the long-term staffing and what our other projects and current commitments are.
Okay.
Because we're still trying to work through our backlog of projects.
Okay. Well, this is a huge, heavily used area for people, and so I think if anyone needs that kind of plan, it's at Jamaica Pond. And there's also in the capital budget, there's I think it's $500,000 for the boathouse. What is that for, and what's the plan for using that?
Yeah, so one issue is that there's some cracks in stabilization that needs to occur, and I'm working with public facilities to try to prioritize that work into construction. But there's also there are other facilities deficiencies in that building that we want to try to address through that study. So it's kind of a two-part approach: address the immediate structural concerns, and then what are the other structural concerns that are looming, and how do we protect that structure? Okay,
is there a plan to come in and fix those, or do we need? Are we going to redesign the building?
Right now, it's a plan to make specific structural improvements, and then study the larger structural issues. And we don't have a plan for construction about those larger structural issues.
Okay, I think sort of very low down on the list of things that need to happen at the pond is. But I think something that could help is, I think that's an unutilized space. I think the public could really, benefit from having access to it, and using it, maybe they could grab a coffee, go sit and read by the pond. I mean, many people, they use it for courageous sailing, but I do think public access to that building would be great. This is a constituent asked me this. I didn't know the answer. Who is running the Parks Department, and then what's the plan for having somebody? There's Liza Meyer, I think, is here. Is not the commissioner. So what's the plan to have a Parks commissioner?
So I'm currently the interim commissioner.
Okay.
It'll be a matter of maybe a month or two for an announcement on commissioner.
Okay.
So we're getting close.
Great. One of my constituents was a student at the JFK was hit by a falling branch at the Franklin Park Zoo. Do we maintenance the trees in the zoo? Is that zoo property?
So we were informed of that. The trees within the immediate zoo zone are the zoo's to maintain.
Okay.
But yeah, we did come across, and is there an update on?
Yeah, I'm told that the child is doing. There was an adult who was also struck, but I'm in touch with the family.
It does. I can tell you what we do on the city side when it happens in the city in our parks. It happens on occasion because there are always branches falling, and it's and that's it's just something we have to deal with. We will immediately then assess the health of the tree. Was this, an event where there are other branches, that are problematic and need to be then proactively removed? What's the overall health of the tree? Is it a broader issue in trees in that particular area that we need to identify? But it usually triggers both an immediate response and, a prevention mode.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if that was a city issue or
that's
the
not our
zoo.
tree content.
No, it is the zoo property.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. That went quick.
Thank you, Council Weber. I'm just going to ask everyone in the chambers to turn down their trap music. Just also want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Council President Louis Jen. Councilor Durkin, the floor is yours.
Oh, no, it's okay. Thank you so much. And that was good because the chair had me cracking up. So, so I just first want to thank, I know Liza Meyer is here. I want to thank the Friends of the Public Garden. I want to thank their board chair, Leslie Singleton Adam. I also want to thank Caroline Humphreys and the board chair of the Friends of the Mounted Park Rangers, Alex Leventhal. They're great partners in this work. So I just want to thank them for, I know they've given exhaustive, both given a budget letter that I really stand behind. I do want to get an update, and I had my own letter to the mayor around this budget. As you can imagine, from my district, a third of it was parks related. So wanted to get an update on a couple of things. The first is the Back Bay Fens pathways. What is the status of the project, timeline and scope? And I know that the administration is working on a formal response to my letter, so if you'd prefer to answer it that way, that's totally fine. I also just want to thank now that the interim commissioner for the funding for the Boston Common bathrooms this year. That's something that we really pushed for, and I know the Friends of the Public Garden has been hugely advocating for the city to really take on some of that, some of those concerns. Obviously, the Boston Common is the most used park in the entire city, if not the entire state. So grateful for the advocacy there, and grateful that the administration is putting money behind that. I also want to share just some thanks for the Clarendon Street play area, playground, getting refurbished and redone. Getting to cut a ribbon on something you had nothing to do with is one of the best feelings as a city councilor. So grateful to the Parks Department for investing in the Back Bay. I know that Copley Square is not done yet. I have to say, I don't feel the same as some of the people online. I do think if you look at the plans, we're just sort of flipping where the green space is, as Trinity asked for and as the Back Bay neighbors asked for, given the extensive use of the extensive farmers market activity that happens, and I know the BPL really wants that off of their lawn, so we finally have a space for that. So I just want to say I might be one of the few in this hearing that says that, but I'm grateful for the work that Sasaki and the city has done on Copley Square, and I'm grateful. I do think we did a favor to the Boston Athletic Association in opening it early, and oftentimes you do a favor, it never rubs everyone the right way. So unfortunately, we had to get the bricks open before we got the green space open. So I just want to put that onto the record. That is my feeling about Copley Square. And I do think when I looked through my constituent tracker before coming to this hearing, the top concern was the Public Garden, Boston Common, and we've obviously had a snowy winter. Not all of the pathways were cleared this winter, so I just want to make sure for next year that the Parks Department has the resources to, and I know it was a crazy situation where things were melting and then freezing over and then melting and then freezing over, but I just want to make sure that for next year we definitely have that taken care of. I think those are the majority of my asks. I do just want to highlight some of the asks from the Friends of the Boston Mounted Park Rangers Mounted Unit letter. Some of the asks in this are between, $4,000 and $7,000. Things like repairing the stall doors, drainage improvements, padlock fencing replacements, all things that I know, given the private investment that happens with the horses, we should definitely be able to take care of. So please let me know how I can advocate on top of my other advocacy for the parks. And then just in terms of the Boston Common Master Plan, that is the top investment that the city is doing in District 8 for our parks. I think the Friends of the Public Garden and I share the same urgency to get parts of that completed. I'm also one of 3 members of the city that are on the Boston Common Maintenance Trust Fund, so I get to live the details of rat burrows and sewers collapsing every year, and I just want to make sure that on top of doing that regular maintenance that we're doing every year, we're also making sure that we actually have realized the vision that we have for the Boston Common. So, sorry, I'll let you guys respond to all of those questions.
All right, if we miss one, come back at us. Let's see, on the budget letter, I would appreciate the offer to sort of wait for a formal response, so we'll get back to you comprehensively in due course. On the Fenway pathways, do you want to take that, Kathy?
Sure. We are currently trying to get through the permitting phase of that. There's significant permitting because it is in a waterway, within 100 feet of a waterway. We're also touching DCR property, so there's a lot of different moving parts trying to get all the permitting lined up. So we're in the permitting phase of that project and hoping to go out to bid as soon as that is complete. I think that was, but there's other...
Do we have a more definitive time frame in terms of schedule, and we hope that to be?
Yeah, I'm hopeful we can get out to bid this summer, but it is dependent on getting through the permitting, which is we have to rely on some of our partners and other agencies to get through their own processes to review and then sign on to be a co-sponsor for the Concom permitting, for example. So,
I know folks in the Back Bay and in the Fenway are really eager, so just any update that you have, I'd love to meet in more detail.
Yeah, as soon as I have more definitive information, I will, of course, share it. And I can see where we are, exactly where we are in that permitting, and get back to you.
And happy to be connected directly to folks who are interested, keep them in the loop. On Copley Square Plaza, I appreciate your call for patience. I have not ever seen an architectural critic who is willing to judge a building while it's under construction. So I'd encourage folks to wait until it is open. I think people will find it to be a
And I'll just say, I hope that some of those reporters will call the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay who advocated for that particular design.
Yeah. And I think when we open it towards the end of this calendar year, I think that's the time to see how we can use it differently. I want to reaffirm to folks that there will be more trees than we started with. There were about 55 trees plus or minus when we got started. There'll be over 80 when we're done. Canopy coverage was a massive part of this, putting green space where green space should go, and hardscape where hardscape will be used was part of this, as you noted. So I share your advocacy for patience and not to prejudge something that is partially open now. On snow removal, I'll go over to Nate, but I'll preface this by saying, as folks know, we didn't have much plowable snow for the last 3 years until this winter. We had a tremendous amount of turnover in staff and in operating contracts. And I'm not raising that at all as an excuse, but there was a learning curve in the first snowstorm that I think subsequent ones this winter we performed much better, learned from what did not work on the first one. And the challenge of having snow cycles thaw and then freeze was a challenge, right? And that's where it's, if something is snow, it's easier to move. It becomes ice within hours because it's melted and refrozen. That becomes something that's hard to catch up with. So we're trying to adapt our prioritization process to get out to places that we know, are those corridors and pathways as absolutely as quickly as possible.
And I'll just say, the reason I'm bringing this up is there's always been a debate on whether the Parks Department has to clear all of the paths in the Boston Common and the public garden. And I just want to put on the record that it is the most used park, in the entire city, in the entire state. So just making sure that every single path is open is really, of concern to my constituents.
Yep. Good.
Yeah, I mean, you call it the perfect storm. It was December 21st, if I remember correctly. So staffing was an issue. The freeze thaw ice is an issue. We try to put less salt on the interior of parks because, especially the public garden, and essentially we lost control of it. So there's nobody that wants to live that day again. So we will do everything we can not to. So yes, we are on it. In the pathways, we do, typically in those parks, we do clean all the interior pathways on those. Sometimes with staffing, if we can't get to all of them, or if we lose control of it because of the ice, it makes it very difficult. Once it ices over, it's very, very difficult unless you put a lot of chemical down on it to get it back to where we need it. So, but yes, we will always try to clear every pathway.
And then with the mounted unit and the stables, we'll look into that. Those are, sort of not massive budget items. So certainly keeping that in a state of good repair is really important for, the animals and the mounted unit.
Okay, and I just have one more thing, and Chair, if you'll let me. There is a railing near 112 Fisher Ave that gets you to McLaughlin Playground in Mission Hill, and the railing is gone, and it is basically prohibiting people using the park. And part of, in the capital budget, we have some improvements to that playground. I just want to make sure, there are people playing, but it's not called the playground. I'll just say that it's really, really important that we get that railing fixed before we prioritize any other capital improvements. A couple of constituents have had issues like getting home, and I really just think accessibility is like the top concern for me. So I would just make sure that that is either included in the capital plan or really is just fixed because it's like super important, and maybe it's outside of this. Maybe it's somehow like into the operating budget of just a quick fix that can happen.
Yeah, anything that's about safety and railings, like we don't wait for a capital project to address. So were we
Two
aware
of them have been
one?
fixed, and
Okay.
this is the last one that needs to be fixed in Mission Hill.
Okay, so we'll jump on that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Council President Louis Jane. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the administration for being here. Really appreciate your work. Apologies for my delay. I was at the coffee hour in Dorchester, where I'm going to blank on her name, but she did a great job on answering the two questions that came up, which were parks questions. I have two specific park questions, and just in reviewing, I know I probably missed part of the presentation from Candace from ADSL asked about how Town Field, how it was once in the capital budget, but it's not there. But I see here in design and construction, continued design work, there's to develop a comprehensive plan that will guide future park development at Town Field, Doherty Gibson Playground. But I don't believe that's is it in the capital budget? It's there. Okay, I believe it was it further along at some point? I believe they believe that there was a deeper investment at some point, or that the work had been further along.
We did the playground a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, and opened that. And then we moved into a master planning type phase, and we have additional funding from City Council to develop that work further. So we've completed kind of the vision master plan of where we want to go, and we have a new project manager who is assigned to address the next phase of design work to implement that.
Okay, great. Through the chair, could I just get that, and so I could just respond and tell Candace exactly where it stands today? That would be awesome. Thank you. I think we had a budget hearing prior where I uplifted Ross Playground, Rossfield, and I know you're working in Community and Park on that one. It's a really well used. Especially now, I go by and it's just nothing but like baseball being played. But I also believe that community members want to see a more thought out design, and it's the layout of Rossfield has changed a lot in the last 2 decades, and I think that they're looking for more creativity with how Rossfield looks and how members are able to use it. Do we have a Franklin Parks administrator yet? And if we don't, where is that?
I'm very optimistic we'll be able to make an announcement in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, great. I think that's important to shepherd all of the work that's happening that Franklin Park Coalition is doing, so want to make sure that we get a Franklin Park administrator in place. I also joined with my council colleague, Councilor Durkin, in our advocacy for a downtown parks administrator, and so hope that we can see that coming to light. Chief Sweat, I think the goal is that every resident in the city of Boston lives within 10 minutes of a park. Is that the goal, or is it 15-minute walk? What is the goal?
It's a 5 to 10 minute walk.
5 to 10 minute walk. And when we say that, is that of any park, or is that of a city-owned park, state-owned park, or any other green space?
It's any park.
Any
And
park.
we've achieved that metric of having a park within a 10-minute walk of every resident.
Okay, and so is that gonna include city-owned, state-owned? The closest park to me is probably about a 7-8 minute walk. It's the Edgewater Food Forest. What is that considered? Is that considered?
I'd need to look into that and get back to you.
Okay, because otherwise I think, my area wouldn't fall within that 10-minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
10-minute walk.
Yeah, and it's, I'd highlight for folks, it's a general measure of access to parks. That doesn't mean that we are satisfied. There are areas that have access to multiple parks within a 5 to 10 minute walk, and there's some that have less access, and we want to focus on bringing as much open space. And to your point, the diversity of what that open space is.
Right.
Is it active recreation? Is it a passive park? Is it, an urban wild that we own? Like, what is the open space?
Yeah, and I say that and say, I love the Edgewater Food Forest. It's in Mattapan, but I want to know if if we're including that in the metric of residents having a 5 to 10 minute park or 10-minute walk. And I live in Hyde Park, right on the line with Mattapan, in an area where there could be more trees and more green space, and just want to make sure I'm uplifting the advocacy and requests of neighbors. And then I think lastly, I went on last year a really great tour of our animal shelter with Director Trzynski, who is here, with Director Bickerton, and hopefully I'm getting your title right. Right, Director? No, I got it.
What do titles mean?
Okay, they don't mean anything. Okay, call me Rootsy. And one of the things I was advocating to the administration is how much you all are doing with such a small and tight space, and it's not comparable to the need. And I would not go throughout life calling myself necessarily an animal advocate, but in terms of for us and our ability to meet the needs of our constituents, I know that at one point there was a discussion about a new animal shelter. And I had conversation with administration after visiting, and recently as a budget cycle, about where we would stand on a new animal shelter. And I know that there was discussions about renovations to the animal shelter right now, because there couldn't be commitments on creating a new shelter. If I could learn a little bit more about happy that those are happening, happy to continue advocating, but want to sort of understand where that stands right now.
Sure, I'll come in and then I'll invite Steve, because he's been really passionate on this. So we're doing both simultaneously. So to site locate, design, raise the capital for, and then deliver a new animal shelter is obviously a multi-year project. The current conditions right now, we're trying to improve as much as possible. So there is an HVAC project, which will have a significant impact on the comfort of both the animals and staff at the facility, that should be able to be executed this summer. To give you a sense of the challenge of this, is there is not, in order to do the work, we have to find a place for the animals and staff and caregivers temporarily. And it shows you how challenging the coverage of the system is that there isn't that capacity. So we're working through that. We'll find a temporary solution, and it may be things that we procure temporarily to put things to allow our service to continue. That project should take 6 to 9 months, depends on if we can do it all at once or if it's going to be phased within the shelter, but that should have a significant improvement on the health and well-being of both staff and animals. That does not, to your point, solve the long-term challenge that we're currently operating out of a non-purpose-built animal shelter and veterinary facility. They are amazing at what they're able to do in that non-purpose-built facility. I think we owe the residents and citizens of Boston a purpose-built facility as soon as we can deliver it, but that is a mid to long-term challenge in front of us. Steve, you want to?
Have we identified any locations?
I describe it as we've ruled out places. We're going through our list of saying, does this make sense? Does that, we've looked at other places where the city's had animal services before. We've looked at other locations. We have not identified a preferred location at the moment. But
Deputy Commissioner.
There you go.
Not too much to add to that. We're working very closely with public facilities, very appreciative of their help as well as property. The animal shelter is owned by the property management department. We're their tenant there. And they're helping us site a temporary location. We're looking at even at temporary type pop-up facilities that we could move into for a short time while the HVAC project is underway, and then can move back into the building. That'll make a huge difference. We've had some heating and cooling issues seasonally over the last few years in the current building, so that'll make a big difference. And then we're hopeful that we'll be able to site and design a new shelter in the shorter term, but obviously that is a longer term effort.
Thank you, and I just want to say thank you to the staff at the animal shelter. They're amazing, working under very limited and constrained space. So as much as we're thinking about design space for the staff as well, we had them here. We did a little puppy therapy. They brought, and so they were wonderful, and they were wonderful during my visit. And I just want to make sure that in the way that we're valuing all of our employees, both with pay, with, you know, places to be able to have a lunch break where they get away from all of the yapping of the dogs, that we do that as much as we can. So thank you.
Imagine what we'll be able to do with a new building, right?
I know, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you to my counselors, colleagues for great questions, and thank you for being here and all your service. I just also want to just echo my support for increased capacity and facilities for the animal shelter. In last year's hearing, you touched on your plan to employ public service level agreements as a way to help us ensure we are making all parks accessible and welcoming in the city. Can you elaborate on the nature of these, I think they were called SLAs, and how they work and how they came about and where we are right now in the timeline? I know? Okay. It was public service level agreement.
Service level agreement. 311 is SLAs.
Okay. All right. No worries. Burial ground maintenance and upkeep. We've heard some constituents bring up the concerns of maintenance around headstones. Can you talk to me about the resources and what's needed to make sure that, you know, our burial grounds are upkept?
Yeah, so one has been staffing and turnover and making sure that we are fully staffed to be able to keep up with demand. And I think, as you saw from the numbers that we reported, we were able to increase the number of burials that we were able to handle within the city cemetery system because of staffing. And then just keeping up with making sure that those are, you know, employees that we're supporting and reducing turnover as much as possible and increasing the quality of life of that employment. Do you have concerns that you're hearing about from folks that?
Yeah, we can forward to you after the hearing.
Happy to jump on that.
Are there any vacancies, or are you advocating for more staffing?
Darlene, where are we at on staffing on?
Cemetery.
Yeah.
So cemetery is we have 4 vacancies. We have 2 grave diggers, two prospective candidates, and we have 2 special heavies. But for the most part, cemetery is mostly fully staffed, and they just had a turnover for grave diggers within the last month or so.
Awesome. Thank you. My constituents in the Wild Civic area were looking to create a new park. I think this has been going on for the last, feels like 5 years. We're in the middle of the back and forth between Boston Water and Sewer Company, Parks and Street. It's a legal thing that has been dragged out for a few months. Can I get a commitment from your team that by the end of this month, we'll be able to figure out whatever legal situation is happening there?
Sorry, the location again?
Norwell Park. I forgot the address.
I will look into this and see where we are with the legal negotiations. I'm happy to bring the chief into it as well, but I know that's a new park that's being funded from the CPA. The acquisition was funded from the CPA directly to a developer. And those are 3 parcels, and there's one that was transferred from MOH. And we're also combining it with call it the nub, but it's a former right-of-way. So there's some legal issues with Boston Water and Sewer that we've been sorting out and trying to get the parcels transferred to the department, the CPA purchased parcels transferred to the department so that we can put it out to bid once all the pieces are in place. So I'll look into that and get back to you.
I appreciate it, and I'm happy to get everyone on a call just to hash it out. There was a question I had around collaboration between different departments. There's Parks and Recreation, there's BCYF, there's, I think it's YES that does sports. Can you talk to me how you collaborate in terms of providing the recreation part with those other agencies?
Sure. At a high level then, Steve, do you want to come in on this as well? I can talk about One of the challenges we've had is if you are looking to reserve a court or a field, indoor or outdoor, there was a different permitting experience, based on who actually owned the asset. We're now trying to flip the script and have sort of a single point, and I believe that was launched this past summer, where you can, where you identify on the website what you're looking for, and it walks you through the exact process, as opposed to having to start from knowing exactly how to permit a school basketball court that's in a gymnasium differently than a field that we control. So I think part of that was taking an end user experience focus as opposed to like a departmental focus. So do you want to come in and see?
Sure. I can also say that our recreation division, Mike Devlin and his group, they work very closely with organizations, like you mentioned, YES. They work very closely with BCYF, partnering on best utilization of facilities. Sometimes, obviously, seasonally, our fields aren't the best places for various organizations to run their recreation programs. So we partner with BCYF and gyms and their sites as well. They have a very close relationship with our program managers, as well as a lot of the youth sports and even adult sports organizations around the city. Our recreation division's goal is to work with them and help them enhance their programs and give them the resources that we can, and also step in to run a lot of the Mayor's Cup programs and different tournaments and things like that that enhance recreation across the city. So definitely a big shout out to Mike Devlin and his group. They're not here today because they're out in the parks this time of year and running those programs. So I think our recreation program is an example for any municipal recreation division around the state that's very well run and does great work partnering with other city agencies as well as neighborhood nonprofits as well.
Thank you. One of the other things that I have been advocating for to every department or cabinet that's come before us is just more collaboration with our equity cabinet and equity department in terms of when there's a time to put out an RFP, having someone from the cabinet or the department, one of the 9 departments, help construct the language around the RFP, and then also have one of the cabinet members or departments be part of that selection committee. Just want to make sure that equity is part of all of our work, not just in words, but also like literally, like someone from the equity cabinet being part of that whole process when we're awarding contracts. Yes. Now I'll go back to public testimony. I believe Alexander's on the screen, so Alexander, the floor is yours. Alexander,
thank you.
Yep. Perfect.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you all for having me. I'm Alex Leventhal, board president of the Friends of the Boston Park Rangers Mountain Unit, and I'm here to request your support in securing necessary funding for the Boston Park Rangers in the city's 2026 budget. Our organization is dedicated to ensuring that the Rangers continue their vital role in making Boston Parks a welcoming, safe, and educational space for all visitors. Since their establishment in 1982, the Boston Park Rangers have been an essential presence in our parks, serving as guides, educators, and protectors. Beyond their critical public safety responsibilities, they provide educational programs that enrich the lives of our city youth. However, despite their value, the Rangers continue to operate with limited resources. While our organization was formed in 2009 to help sustain the mounted unit during an economic downturn, the Rangers now rely primarily on city funding to continue their work. As you consider the city's 2026 budget, we respectfully ask for your support in maintaining existing funding levels and addressing urgent infrastructure needs. The Parks and Recreation Department currently receives less than 1% of the overall city budget, and the Boston Park Rangers receive only one fraction of that. While progress has been made, continued underfunding threatens the safety of both Rangers and horses. Specifically, we seek funding this coming year for the following priorities: repairing stall doors, drainage improvements, paddock fencing replacement, main paddock repairs and regrading, maintaining funding for the 20 full-time ranger positions we have today, maintaining the existing annual equine care budget, and maintaining existing emergency veterinary services. The Boston Parks are one of the city's greatest assets, and the park rangers play a crucial role in ensuring they remain safe and engaging for all. By providing the necessary funding, the city can protect this vital program and allow the rangers to continue their important work. We understand the many demands on the city's budget, but we firmly believe that investing in the park rangers and is an investment in the safety and education and well-being of our residents and visitors. We look forward to the opportunity to meet all of you and discuss these needs further, and we appreciate your time and consideration, and for all of you that have supported us in the many years past. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today, and again, we look forward to meeting with all of you.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Councilor Coletta Zapata. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to still ask questions, and I apologize that I'm in and out. I'm dealing with a personal matter, but everything is okay. I just want to thank you for the prioritization of Ryan Playground and the Mary Ellen Walsh Greenway. Thank you so much. I look forward to the ribbon cutting for each, or the commencement at least, for Mary Ellen Walsh Greenway. I'll start with maintenance and then go through to capital projects. Thank you as well for your responsiveness to a lot of the questions that I've had over the last couple of years. This may seem redundant, but for the purposes of transparency and being here for the public to consume this, this is why I'm going to be asking these questions. So Memorial Park, Porzio Park, as well as Union Street Park, there's been key concerns as it relates to safety hazards on the courts themselves, so cracks and holes in the court surface. Folks are worried about tripping hazards and putting players at risk of injury. I understand that at least for like Porzio Park is within the capital plan. Memorial Park has its own unique maintenance situation there. Union Street Park is totally separate from the capital plan. But how can we prioritize the necessary repairs to restore these courts so that they are safe and playable in the interim, either between or before capital projects or before the summertime? And I guess, can you walk me through or provide a window into how a work order is put in place, how long it takes, who works on it, et cetera? Thank you.
I'll start with Porzio. I know Porzio is going into construction, or
We've designed.
But I do know about the courts over there. I actually looked at them last week. I was over there. We're going to fix it up as best we can, essentially fill in the cracks and try to smooth it out as best we can until it does go under capital. Union, I'm not aware of, actually. I'll have to take a look at Union, so I didn't know about that one.
Okay, and Memorial Park?
Yes, Memorial Park we added that on. I met the other day, we're going to add it on to so in the fall, that should be taken care of. The tennis courts we're talking over there.
Yeah, the tennis courts. So we have a various courts annual program where we are able to just look at the courts, the court conditions. We sometimes make sometimes it's a larger crack repair project, sometimes it's a full depth renovation. So we have a pretty good look at all of the parks citywide at this point and trying to prioritize what are the ones that are in the most need that we can address through a various courts project that are not part of the capital plan, otherwise part of the capital planning projects. So that allows us to do things like, we're hoping we can do some work at East Boston Memorial Park to address those significant cracks. We're also looking for other ways, other sources of funding. A lot of times there are grants out there for courts specifically from the U.S. Tennis Association and other grants like that. So we're looking at all of those and trying to combine them all with our capital project of the various courts to multiply the amount of work we can do across the city.
Okay, so Porzio Park soon, and then Memorial Park in the fall time.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the fall.
And then for Union, we'll get more details.
Union, I will look at.
Okay, great.
Hopefully this week.
Thank you. Langone and Popolo Park, you already know what I'm going to ask. Besides it already being a new and marquee field, the grass is rarely green. The Little League and the Friends of have come to me asking for $25,000 for reseeding of that field and having it continue not just this fiscal year, but the next fiscal year. Is there $25,000 allocated for Popolo and Langone Park in this budget for the maintenance of it?
I don't think there is specifically.
No, there is not.
Okay, will you commit to allocating those funds for that park?
I think we have to look at some of the other operating expenses and see if we can accommodate that.
Okay. Thank you. This is something that I brought up directly to the mayor, to OBM, and all of you, and so hopeful that we can see that $25,000 in there for the north end. McLean Park, thank you for the additional allocation of, I think we went from 910,000 to 1.4, so thank you. When I had spoken to that group, they had asked for that money for the wall, for the retaining wall to be maintained, but it's going towards the accessibility of the site and the improvement of the basketball court. Is there any money that we can allocate to make that retaining wall safe?
It's a freestanding wall, and I think so. The additional funding that we requested in the FY26 budget is to build the plan that was presented to the community with a couple of new play structures in the front with safety surfacing, trying to keep all the existing trees that we can across that site, and addressing some of the heaving that the trees are causing, and just making that a smooth surface. And still yet very actively used by the adjacent school and the community as a whole. So that doesn't address the wall conditions, but I think we will continue to support the Friends and approaching CPA to address the walls through that funding. And if we can accommodate some work through our capital project, we certainly will.
Okay, and I hope if CPA is obviously very competitive, and I will also support them. They've been at this for a couple of years now, and so where we can accommodate them, that's something that I will also advocate for and uplift on their behalf. Christopher Columbus Park, I was really excited. I just visited their friends group on last Tuesday, so a week ago. There's continued design work. It says that you're going to begin design to address climate vulnerability and improve park features. When can we anticipate that a design will be ready?
Ready is probably a year to 18 months out, at least. We have received a federal earmark that we're still waiting to actually receive from the feds, but it is an earmark, it's not a grant. So we haven't addressed that. We haven't advanced that ahead of that earmark coming to us. But as soon as that comes through, we will, and we don't have a timeline for it, unfortunately.
Okay.
So kind of trying to hedge a bit, and we want to make progress, but we also don't want to get ahead of taking advantage of that federal money.
Okay. And I know that you're in close communication with Joanne and that friends group. Last but not least, for the time I have, I would love to learn more about the Parks Fund. It's like a freestanding 501c3 that is able to get community benefits directly from a development project, I think through Article 80 or maybe not. Can you just talk through your knowledge of the Parks Fund, how it was created, only because we're thinking about trying to do something with arts and culture, but anybody that has any information about the Parks Fund would love to learn more.
Yeah, I can give a high level, and then Steve, feel free to come in as well. It is an umbrella of a lot of specific funds, so it's not a single entity. There are actually 50-odd different accounts within that. Most of it is obligated to specific either parks or neighborhoods coming from, as you mentioned, development agreements. And so a lot of these are for seed capital. Sometimes it is a certain amount of money, but not all of the money necessary to deliver on what the community is asking for. So sometimes it's multiple directions from different developments going into that fund, and then allowing us to do the capital program that we want, that the community wants, to deliver. So we manage that regularly. There is money also, from other agreements in terms of some of the golf course revenue and supporting Parks and Rec. But it's been a longstanding resource, in particular during times of tight budgets, to continue to deliver on parks programming.
You feel like it's been helpful in trying to accomplish some of the maintenance, or is it for maintenance in capital?
It depends on which. So some is for maintenance, some is for capital programs, some is designated to specific parks, or neighborhoods to augment existing city resources. So it really depends. The fund for Parks and Rec is really, it's the funds for Parks and Rec, and they're all administered by the same commission team.
Fascinating. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. The Chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I highlighted some of the parks in my district already, but want to ask about some of the other parks that I didn't mention. At Moakley Park, I wanted to ask for, in the Little League fields, and they're also used by some softball groups as well. What are we doing to maintain our infields there with the necessary dirt? Can this be a priority?
Yeah, we can keep it on the list and make it a priority. We have 260 infields across the city with a staff of 7. Unfortunately, with the weather that we've been having with the rain, it just absolutely kills us. It's very difficult to try to keep up and get every field ready after it rains out. So we are trying the best we can. I will make a note to put it on a priority list to make sure they're down there. But it is a lot of times an uphill battle, especially after a rain.
What about the Babe Ruth field as well? A lot of high school teams play in the Babe Ruth field. My son played for Boston Latin baseball. They played down there occasionally. What are we doing with the baseball field at the Babe Ruth fields?
I mean, it's the same as, my last statement of, we try to get to every field that we can with the staff that we have. So again, I'll put it on the priority list and make sure they get out there and take a look at it.
Why is there arsenic on the ground on the field?
We think that that's a result of the filled land that helped to create Moakley Park, and it has migrated to the surface.
Can we address that?
We are addressing that. The plan is to, that's why it's fenced off at the moment, to use that area, remove the topsoil, and put it in the eventual berm so that it's capped and covered, so that everything that the public touches is safe.
Thank you. I also did a lot of work on supporting the park rangers as well. I want to advocate for them. Critical role they play in Boston Common. At one time, they actually had the power to arrest people. They were much more effective. They still are effective, but at one time they had the ability to arrest people, and that helped significantly in the Boston Common. Do we support providing them with arrest powers? I know it has to be changed at the state level, but is that something we could revisit, or would I have your support if that did take place, if there was a proposal?
I mean, as you note, there was a state legislative not targeting the park rangers, but targeting police training overall, and there were a number of municipal enforcement units that lost their arresting power. So it'd have to be part of a broader conversation about did that additional restriction go too far? I think we've obviously been living with the ramifications of them not having enforcement powers that they used to, and I would agree with you that it has limited their effectiveness in both crowd control and safety in the parks. And certainly from our perspective, it's worth exploring. Is there a way of getting some of that back?
Okay, I represent the Copley area. I love the Copley area. I represent part of the Back Bay. I know there was a discussion earlier about it. What are we doing in the Copley Square area as it relates to public safety, providing the best public safety we can for people that are in there during their lunch break from work, or visitors coming to enjoy the Copley Square area, especially in and around the Parks Department property? What are we doing to ensure their public safety?
I mean, it's the same as our major downtown park. So the park rangers are a presence, but obviously that's a light presence because they're spread particularly thinly. The police have a presence. There is a friends group that helps. Activation helps. And we're excited to see the entire square reopen. And it's obviously both highly utilized and highly visible. So they're not there aren't pockets that don't have visibility to significant areas of public realm. So eyes on the park is always a solution as well.
Yeah, just for the record, I wasn't invited to one of the groundbreaking of ribbon cuttings there, but that you guys may have made a mistake, but that's in my district. So I just wanted to highlight to you about Copley Square.
I don't think we've had a groundbreaking, or we haven't had a ribbon cutting.
Some type of reception, ceremony, maybe a few months ago. I'll provide you the information. But I guess my point is that park, that area is in District 2.
Okay.
And opposite is the other district. Recently, the Parks Department, there was some trees cut at the Tynan School in South Boston. Parks indicated one tree would be replanted in the fall, but several are under the jurisdiction of the BPS. I was told that BPS needs to work with speak for the trees, for the tree replantings, but is the Parks Department working with BPS on this?
I can look into that and get back to you. Sometimes it has to do with our ability to plant. We can plant trees in the public realm around Boston Parks. If it's BPS property, they usually are responsible for that.
Okay. One of my colleagues mentioned the 5 minutes or the 6 minutes walk from residence to a park. So in Chinatown, I know I highlighted that earlier, Tai Tung Village. So are we considering Tai Tung Village as an official park where people would walk to? Is that part of the 5 minutes?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the Greenway.
I am troubled. I am troubled with that then, because yes, it is a park, but it's not a traditional park where you'd go to rest and exercise and enjoy the trees and the landscape. So I am troubled with that. So I guess my point is, well, let me you can respond to it.
So all of the publicly owned parks are in that inventory, along with state-owned parks, and parks like the Greenway contribute to that 10-minute walk shed.
Okay, I guess
regardless of their size or the content of what's in those open spaces.
Okay. My point is, we can't ignore Tai Tung Park just because it's the smallest park in the city, because it's in the middle of a immigrant community, the most dense area, the highest concentration of poverty. I think we have to do better than what we're providing them right now. That's my point.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Coletta Zapata has already mentioned the Parks Fund. It seems to be doing very well. Like in 2019, it was about 10.5 million. It's now 21.25 million. 46 different donors and sub-funds. If we get I think this question's already been answered perhaps, but so that's long-standing bequests, and also that are specifically addressed to specific parks and neighbourhoods. But also then when we get money from a developer as a community benefit, is that where it lands in the fund? So that might explain there was like an exponential growth in that fund in the last 6 years or so.
Yes, that was not some secret investment return ideas that.
I thought that somebody knows the secret sauce of how to make a lot of money.
No, and as the vast majority, as you know, the vast majority of the funds in there are restricted to some type of use. Either, it could be geographic, it could be to a specific neighborhood, it could be to an existing park, it could be to a new park. And there's a balance between maintenance and operations, but it's really dependent on the restrictions that come with that initial dollar allotment, and then we're stewards of it to execute the project.
And then in terms of how it's taken out of the fund, is it like some funds allow, it's you take out 5% a year or whatever? It's important maybe to keep that principle there and then just use the interest of the money, or how does that work?
So the vast majority of these are not endowments, so they're not set up like that, where you expect the money to be in perpetuity. Is to deliver a certain capital asset or to deliver a maintenance program over a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. So it really is dependent on the upwards of 50 sub-funds that you mentioned and what the purpose of the money was.
So then the Cemetery Trust Fund it is an endowment fund, so it's got about 19 million in it, and then we draw down about 900,000 every year for the historic. It's just a group of like 5, I think, historic cemeteries, like Evergreen in Brighton is one of them. So,
do you want to talk about the cemetery fund?
Sure. The Cemetery Trust Fund is separate from the Fund for Parks and Rec. It is treated as an endowment. It throws off investment interest each year to the tune of just under $1 million per year, and it's used in all of our cemeteries. So we have 3 active cemeteries. You mentioned Evergreen, Fairview Cemetery, and Mount Hope. Those are our 3 actives, and then we have 17 historic cemeteries across the city. And generally, the cemetery trust is used for maintenance and capital improvement projects in our active cemeteries, and there is money in the Fund for Parks and Rec under the historic cemeteries subclass that is used for various maintenance and improvement projects in the historic cemeteries.
So in terms of Evergreen is a Civil War era cemetery in Brighton. Is it considered a historic cemetery? It's not like Cops Burial Ground or whatever, is it?
Sure. When I say active versus historic cemeteries, our active cemeteries are still accepting new burials, so Evergreen falls in that category. The historic cemeteries are the ones that are no longer accepting burials. Most of those go back to the founding days of the city in the 1600s.
Yeah.
And, you know, Old Granary and King's Chapel, those are the kind of most notable old historic cemeteries.
Some very old bones over there.
Yeah, some old bones.
I'm thinking about, I had a conversation with Commissioner Coop way back 2020. I think we talked about capacity, like in terms of the active burial grounds that we have as in the city. What's your capacity? He said we were going to run out by 2030, and then I think COVID accelerated that timeline a little. Where are we at, and are we making contingency plans for maybe alternative ways to memorialize our loved ones when they pass on or whatever? There are other ways to do it apart from taking up burying them in the ground.
Sure. So I think there's a twofold approach there. One is that cremations are becoming more and more popular. Cremations, even when the remains are interred, they take up much less space, which is a positive thing for land use in our cemeteries. The other thing that we're doing to address that is a good amount of the cemetery trust money that's allocated to us every year we're using to increase burial capacity.
For the public, we had audio difficulty, so we are now moving the hearing online. I just want to thank everyone for their willingness and their collaboration on moving so quickly on and continue this conversation. I will start off with a few questions around updates around some parks in my in my district, or in District 4. Are you able to update us on Common Square Park and also Walsh Park? Timeline for completion, and any concerns on being able to fulfill what was proposed in the design?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Walsh Playground is on track to be completed in the next month or so. That is a grant that there's a park that we've received a park grant from, so we have to finish it by, in this fiscal year, and that's on track. So the construction of that will be wrapping up. It includes playground, courts, ball field, both a softball field and a small multi-purpose field, pathways, drainage improvements. I think there's some lighting involved, some pedestrian lighting there as well. And Codman Square, we're also working towards completing that project this summer, completing construction this summer. And the art piece is going to be coming in the next few weeks, and then wrapping up the construction, the site construction in the rest of the park. We're looking at the fencing and try to figure out how we can fund that, but we're close to figuring it out.
And also, I believe Ceylon Park, was there another phase of Ceylon? Yep.
We've applied for a grant for that, so we're waiting for word on that. And once we receive that, then we're nearly shovel ready on that, so we'll put it out to bid once we hear about whether we've received this grant.
Thank you for those updates. Oftentimes, when we do over the new parks, well, give an example, Walsh Park, we're getting a brand new park. However, sidewalks, streets are, have had deferred maintenance. They also need improvements. Can you talk to me about your collaboration and coordination with the Streets Cabinet on when we're doing over parks to improve the entire area that leads up to the park? Is that a schedule, or are improvements happening hand in hand? Is that something that streets and parks are working on?
When we hear from the community that there are issues with the surrounding streets, we try to bring it to their attention. But the budget that we have, we want to sync directly into the park, so that we're getting the most bang for the park's capital budget as we can. There are times when we might be moving a maintenance entrance, or we need to rebuild and make an accessible route to the park, which would involve the street, and we would then coordinate that relatively small scope of work directly with the Streets Cabinet and make sure if we need to go through PIC, we do that, or if it's just just following their details, we are including the details that they dictate, so that everything matches in the right of way.
Yeah, and this is something I'll advocate for streets, but it would be nice if we're getting a new park that we get new sidewalks and new streets, all the public infrastructure that leads up to these new parks. The BRJP goals, are we meeting those aspirational goals on Walsh and also Dorchester Park? Are you able to report on that?
I don't have a report on that, but I can ask our colleagues at the BRGP for an updated report.
And with the larger road reconstructions being led by streets, whether it's Columbia Road, Blue Hill Ave, and then even some of the smaller roadway improvement, how does Parks, do you talk to me about the collaboration with Parks on making sure that when streets are, improving our roadways or adding a curb out or a roundabout, that there's green infrastructure. It's because concern of mine is that I don't want more pavement, right, in District 4, just because District 4 does have some of the highest temperatures in the city already. So can you talk to me about how Parks and Streets works together to make sure that there's some green infrastructure in some of their roadway improvement?
Yeah, happy to cover that a bit. So obviously, as you're aware, the Office of Green Infrastructure is located in the Streets Cabinet. And I think, by design, that has been very effective in embedding green solutions being much more of the default rather than the exception, and trying to maximize opportunities as streets are coming out for major reconstructions, and make sure are there opportunities to reduce hardscape and bring in more greenery, be it stormwater swale or pollinator garden or street trees. And so the Streets Cabinet and OGI works really closely with Todd Mistor and the Urban Forestry team about how do we increase the ability to put in healthy street trees as part of those projects and increase canopy coverage during street reconstruction. So that's one where there is much more coordination. It's a bit separate from Kathy's response on parks, where our parks capital schedule is really driven by the community needs, which may or may not align with the street department's miles of road reconstruction that they're trying to get for other processes and wear and tear and maintenance requirements.
But we also do, when some of those major street projects that are coming through that touch the entire corridor, Streets Cabinet shares those plans through the design process with us, and we review them with particular attention to some of this green infrastructure and drainage and how it's going to impact the vegetation. But also, since we're responsible for the street trees, we want to make sure that those trees have enough soil volume to really grow and thrive and provide the canopy that we want on the street. And also that we can maintain those trees with a reasonable amount of within the existing systems that we have. So that is part of our process, is that we do review the streets projects as they move along through design to make sure that it's workable and we're preserving the street trees to the greatest extent possible.
And is there any effort to look back at some of the old improvements that have been made? And I'm just thinking around, I think it's Washington and Fairmont Ave. There's like this big divider of concrete and cement that has no trees in it. But is there, a initiative or an effort to look back on how some past improvements can include or incorporate some green infrastructure?
Maybe this is a project that will try to sort of do lessons learned, or in terms of proactively retrofitting. Or
proactively retrofitting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say two quick responses. One, our sophistication on urban heat island mapping is increased significantly. So we are trying to identify the neighborhoods we know about through the mapping, and then the specific interventions that we can do in terms of bringing more green. And whether or not it's breaking up the hardscape itself, or bringing in things like the green roof bus shelter program, of like using existing infrastructure to bring in more greenery and shading and habitat. So that's one thing. And then secondly, our street tree planting, which we talked about a little bit, we plant pretty close to 2,000 street trees a year. Our urban forestry plan prioritizes environmental justice and urban heat island communities and neighborhoods. About 20, just to give you an aggregate, and this is pretty, since we launched it, standard year for us, about 20% of our geography in Boston qualifies as a priority environmental justice urban heat island neighborhood from the street tree planting criteria. We plant historically about 40% of each year's trees in that 20%. So we are disproportionately prioritizing new street tree infrastructure in those neighborhoods that need it most.
Awesome. So it sounds like identify the areas, and then possibly they could be put on the schedule to get trees.
Exactly. And one of the things, Councilor Worrell, is we want to hear from neighborhood groups, and we want to hear from constituents saying we want this, because that increases the likelihood of success when you have, folks who care about the trees that are going to look after them after we plant them, and we keep them watered for, 3 years after we plant them. We want people to care about the trees and make sure that they're, that they are, paid attention to.
And then my last question is on page 7 of the RFIs. It was a question around your workforce, and it says, similar to employers, we are encountering the impacts of a constrained labor market, particularly in filling positions that require specialized training and professional certifications. Can you tell us what kind of specialized training and which certificates are you looking to fill? And then are you working with the Office of Workforce Development or Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion to fill these gaps?
Yeah. You want to take it, Rob?
Yeah, sure. So with our specialized roles, we're looking for CDL holders and hoisting licenses. So we currently enroll about 30 employees into a hoisting program, so we can try to develop them into some of our vacant roles. And what was the rest of the question?
Yes.
Oh yeah, arborist, like arborist licenses, pesticides licenses. That's pretty much the, those are the licenses that we have to fill specialized roles.
CDL is one of the most difficult lists to try to get. CDL is a very difficult license to get, so it's hard finding people with a CDL license or trying to get them training to get them on the job. Yeah. And Darlene's been great at getting some waivers to let it happen with, give them a year to get into the city, and then they can get their license. So that has worked out pretty good so far. So we're trying.
Yeah, we received approval from the state to relax the CDL and hoisting requirements for our heavy repairmen and our garage foreperson position. So they have up to 6 months to acquire those licenses.
And then how many roles are vacant that need someone with a CDL license?
Okay, so right now we have 8 for maintenance, and then we have 2 for the cemetery division, but we do have some prospective employees. We're just waiting for a few approvals, and then we can move those through to fill some of these vacancies.
All right. And then what about the pesticides?
Those are mostly for my gardeners foreperson. So right now, we hired the gardener foreperson that we hired. They currently do have them. We have a few employees, that's current gardeners, who's inquiring about going to training to obtain those licenses. So right now we're not with our gardeners foreperson who require those roles. They currently fill, but we're trying to enroll some of our gardeners so that, just in case we do lose a gardener foreperson, we can promote.
Okay. Yep, makes sense. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Councilor Weber. Councilor, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Mozart Park, do you have an update on the timeline? It's for those who don't know, this is there's a redesign of Mozart Park, working with Hyde Square Task Force and high school students to work on a new design. How's the design going, and what's the timeline?
So we are currently reviewing designer qualifications. We issued a request for qualifications for the design services that we're going to be procuring. And part of that will be to work with a community identified artist team to site the Duarte sculpture, the environment around the sculpture. So we are currently evaluating designers, and I think we're going to be selecting, hopefully before the end of the month, being able to have a selected designer identified and then issue a contract to them. So I anticipate we may be able to introduce that team to the community late summer, early fall.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I just request that High Score Task Force be involved and
Yeah, absolutely.
get those kids there. They advocated for this to me right after I was elected. You know, I had a meeting with them, so this whole thing kind of comes from them, and I'd really like to see them participate in this. For Daisy Field, there is, there's a renovation of the fields there. I had a conversation with some parents from the Regan League, which uses that as their home field. They were very excited about the renovation and saying it's desperately needed. They were interested in trying to fundraise outside, and have some, because this is Regan League's. League has been around for a long time. There's a lot of people, in the city who've gone through that league. Is there some way to involve them, the league itself, in this process? And is there an opportunity to talk to, like, the Regan League itself might be able to just go out and raise money? I'm not sure. Like, what's your advice for how to proceed there?
Yeah, we welcome their involvement, and we do plan on engaging the most active users of that park directly before we kind of nail down the design and go out to the broader community and discuss the overall plans. So that's definitely on our target list. And I think happy to have a more specific conversation about if there's fundraising, and there's just definitely willing to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I'd love to be a part of it, but I'd also just like to know that you are meeting with representatives of the Regan League. And if you want me to coordinate that, I can do it. If you want to leave me out and just get it done, that's perfectly fine too. But I'd like to make sure that gets done. We pushed last year for an arborist in the budget amendments, and we were informed recently that an arborist was not hired. Instead, the funds were used to plant approximately 50 trees or more in Millennium Park, and we were told, which I think it sounds good to me in terms of using the funds and putting in trees. I think that is worthwhile use of those funds. But I just wanted to confirm that end of this month there's going to be a group of trees going in Millennium Park. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that the work plan is underway. I don't have a specific date for when that is going in yet, but I know there were some emails back and forth with the designer and with the tree team about the details about that.
Okay, and I guess so. There's a tree ordinance, a public tree ordinance. Is there a commission? Has that been formed that's supposed to study the protection of the trees and I think issue reports? I'm not aware of that. There is a tree warden, right? The commission has not been formed, or has it? And then I guess, what are your thoughts on a private tree ordinance?
I think on the private tree ordinance, I'll back up. We do have a tree warden, and the city complies with all the laws around public tree hearings, around evaluation and removal of public shade trees. Public shade trees that are governed by state law are what we refer to as street trees, the trees that are in sidewalk pits. And then to the extent that we are involved with any type of private tree ordinance, that would likely fall, I think, in previous discussions on ISD in accordance with, in concert with building permits and expansion of houses or construction of new buildings and that type of thing.
Well, is there? Do you want to? Would you like to see a private tree ordinance? Is that in the city's goals, or are we not moving forward? People ask me, I get that question, are we can have a private tree ordinance? And I say we need to see how it's going with the public tree ordinance, but I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's at least my current thinking, Councilor Weber, is how you just responded, is that we need to make, we need to make sure the public tree ordinance process is working. What can we learn from that? What are its limitations, before contemplating, what, if anything, makes sense to bring to private sector trees? Appreciating that, that is, that's a whole different can of worms from a private property rights perspective, and opens up concerns and both opportunities and challenges for sort of implementing something like that. We have, and if Todd was here, he would tell you, and Max, I mean, we have significant challenges just enforcing the public tree ordinance in terms of trees being removed by residents and private sector businesses, public street trees that are not allowed to be removed, and the challenges of both oversight and enforcement and catching folks. So we're trying to get that public tree ordinance, embedded and better understood and enforced, and protect the 38,000 odd trees that we currently have under our jurisdiction.
Okay, and then it just last question. I mean, we are here. This is a budget hearing. I think parks. The thing that I think it's flagged when you look at the data is that parks has a hard time or underspends on permanent employees, pretty regularly, or at least in the last few years, in a pretty big number. So we're budgeting for positions that don't get filled. I think, I'm trying to remember that it was something like, I think you've got 220, 230 employees and maybe 260 positions. And the number this year, I think even though the number of employees has gone down slightly the last 3-4 years, the number of openings this year increases from even though we've gone from 230 to 225 in terms of workers, and maybe I'm using I think it's going from 260 to 263 in terms of positions. I mean, can you just explain that? I mean, obviously we want a robust staff working on our parks. I'd support more money for our parks, but in terms of the money's going to people who aren't going to work for the Parks Department, then, it's sort of, as we're looking at the budget, that's a place that, we may look at to funnel those funds to other programming that might help people. Anyway, your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so the vast majority of our positions, I'm not aware of any position that's been open for more than a year that we have net activity on. So part of the challenge, Council Weber, is our industry in this department is a fairly high churn from a turnover perspective of employees, and we will hire folks that stay with us for a couple of years and then get cherry picked by the private sector after getting trained up in the right licenses, and then we're backfilling those roles. So we're constantly in hiring. I would be very concerned if the City Council was looking at those FTEs as sort of places that would be hiring better use elsewhere, because they're critical to our services, and we'll hire folks and then they'll stick with us for a few years, and then we have to hire that role again. And that's part of what you're seeing is in any given snapshot, we're going to have a number of roles open that aren't filled, but we are actively finding recruits for those.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess my question is so let's say my numbers are right. You've gone from 230 to 225 FTEs, but the number of positions goes from 260 to 263. If the funds allotted for those extra where there's already a couple dozen openings, which are, if any tradition, is followed, or the recent history is followed, are just going to remain open, or you'll fill those, but another vacancy will open. What impact will removing, for instance, those 3 additional spots have on your department?
Very good. So I think one of the things to note is that, these aren't, we have that I think is typical across most city departments of under 10%. These aren't the same positions that are vacant for long term. So, we might have a labor position that's open for a couple of months, and then we have a that gets filled, and then we have a kennel attendant position open at the animal shelter for a few months, and then we have a contracts administrator open in our 1010 office for a few months. So we do have kind of a normal vacancy rate as people move on or are promoted or that type of thing. But we don't have any position that's been vacant for over a year that hasn't been acted on in some way, whether it's active in recruitment or something like that. And I don't think we have any current position that's been vacant for more than 12 months. So I think that what you're seeing is a normal vacancy rate. What is normal for us. But it's kind of like whack-a-mole. We fill one position and then we get a resignation or a promotion. So there's a normal vacancy rate, but not the same position that's open long-term.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Councilor Coletta Zapata. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Parks Department for their flexibility in pivoting on and getting on Zoom. I appreciate it. Hope you all can get some lunch soon. I have one question following a maintenance point that I made earlier, kind of getting into the personal questions that Councilor Weber was just asking, and then Greenway graffiti and Lopresti Park. So I'm just saying that out loud for myself. So Memorial Park and the Greenway, last year we saw that there was some issues as it relates to overgrown weeds and trash collection. There was
Oh, Councilor Coletta Zapata, we lost you. I think the councilor is frozen. All right. We will now go to Councilor Braden, and when Councilor Coletta Zapata rejoins us, we will have her resume her line of questions. Councilor Braden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for being flexible and accommodating. Let's see where I was. Where was I? I was mid-sentence when the lights went out. Animal shelter. It seems like the animal shelter, the facility over in Rossendale, we've had in the books for a long, long time to try and. Do we need to do like a philanthropic sort of fundraising effort to really get something going? And I think the animal shelter and the work that we do over in that space is really critical, and it's almost an embarrassment as to how bad the facilities are. So, what can we do? Like, I know when we've been talking about this since I've been a city councillor. So, any thoughts? Like, it's always sort of so far down everybody's. And I'm not saying this about your department, but it's very low down the overall priorities of the city that I think we need to sort of take sort of extraordinary measures to get something to happen over there.
I share your sense of urgency and your sense of desire to be creative in terms of capital and partnership. And it's one of the things that I've been talking with this team about since I returned to City Hall, because it was honestly an issue 10 years ago, and the shelter was in the same place during my first stint. I think there is a lot of value in thinking philanthropically, and our partnership team obviously has a lot at the city scale, a lot on their plate near term in terms of the 250th and some of the other major partnerships, but it is on their list. I've had conversations with Stephen Chan and Alex Meadow. When you go to obviously Angel Memorial and the MSPCA, or you go to the Animal Rescue League of Boston, every room is named after somebody. Mm-hmm. And we haven't. So there is a donor-rich community, that wants to, support animal care. And so I think we have not strategically yet had the opportunity to tap into that. I would like to develop, a plan to do that and to see how we could develop a capital stack a philanthropic capital stack to support this project, while we identify the right location. Yeah. And the ongoing search for a new location that's happening now. Yeah, so the near-term priority for the last year has been getting ready for this project that we talked about, which is the HVAC improvements at the existing facility. Yeah. and finding temporary alternative locations for the staff and animals.
In the short term, yeah.
We've also been brainstorming different locations for a potential permanent site, and we'll continue to do so.
Now I'm skipping to another issue, and it sort of intersects with planning and probably BTD. The Alston Village area is well documented as a heat area, heat island, an urban heat island. It doesn't have a lot of tree cover, and the Commonwealth Ave phase 3 and 4, I think, is an opportunity then to do a lot more greening over there, increase the tree canopy. The tracks are going to be realigned because they're bringing in new cars, so they need to change the track, and they're going to move the track. So, and to realign, and Commonwealth Ave is very wide, and I know it's beautiful downtown in the Back Bay. It's and all on Com Ave. It's just like a really beautiful green space. So, are we in any conversation with BTD and planning and to think about greening that space, creating new green space along the Commonwealth Ave corridor further out, past beyond Packard's Corner out to BC?
I think we get active conversations on that.
I haven't heard about it lately, but I will check in with the design team and see the streets design team and see where they are and check in on it so that we can make sure that we're fully coordinated on that and making that as green as possible.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that one. I do think, Councillor, obviously, as we mentioned, the Office of Green Infrastructure being located where it is, they are proactively, trying to find opportunities as Streets takes on projects. So we'll make sure that we have been looped in at the right point in time on street trees and canopy coverage with OGI, really holistically, the opportunities to bring green infrastructure to that entire corridor.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of that area of Alston, Brighton with Brookline is shocking, because when you look at an aerial photograph, one piece is green and one piece is grey, and it's like, I think that would be an opportunity, and I think would have to, maybe find state funding or whatever to help with that, but it's definitely a priority for the neighbourhood. The other question I had was about animal care and control. Is it possible, it's sort of been a department that is kicked around between, or an operation that's kicked around between different city departments. It was with ISD, it was in different spaces. Is there ever any thought given to it being an autonomous department and having its own independence, and is there any thought about that? And then, and in the event, who would decide that? How would that be accomplished?
We like them, we want to keep them. Steve speaking first. I do think, I've had the privilege both times, because when they're in ISD, they still sat in the EOS cabinet, because at that time, ISD was in the EOS cabinet. I think it's an interesting organizational question, Councillor. I think you want to make sure that any of the independent departments or offices that are sitting in a cabinet that can give them the attention and support and prioritization that they need. And so obviously in EOS, we have a pretty big cabinet, 5 offices and departments, the largest of which is Parks and Rec, and in animal care. There's been lots of connection, from our team, in both indirectly and directly wanting to support animal care. So it's a question that comes up about what is the right structure to help support animal care, which cabinet, which department it sits in. I have not, to your pointed question, I have not thought of them as an independent office, because I'm not sure if they are. I'd have to do an opportunity versus cost about, does that best serve them? Does it serve them?
Yeah.
Or do we need to get them a permanent home and then talk about, how we stand them up over the long term, to best service the needs that they provide?
I think they do incredible work, and Alexis is an incredible leader over there, and is a great motivator. So I think I don't argue that Parks and Rec is a good space for them, because you know the whole issues we talk about with animal control on parks and how dogs are running loose and all that. Like there is a sort of a natural synchronicity there. So I'm not arguing with it, but just wondering just how it's decided that it bounces around between inspectional services, property management, back to inspectional services, and now it's back to parks. And property management. So it goes all over the place. Okay. I'm back to Evergreen Cemetery. I was wondering, there's a lot of space that's sort of underutilized over there. It's almost like a huge compost heap at the back end. Over towards the reservoir. I was wondering, is there any interest in maybe doing like a master plan to look at Evergreen and see if we could, because the walls and all have fallen into disrepair, and the roadways, some of the roadways are looking pretty rough, and then there's that area at the back that could maybe be used for something else in terms of more space, or I don't know, but is there any thought about maybe looking at that to see if we could get a little more capacity out of Evergreen, but also modernize it in some way?
So we in all of our cemeteries, we do have a kind of revolving roadway replacement annual program. So through all the roadways in all three of our active cemeteries, we kind of make our way through every decade or two and replace roadways, especially, and we prioritize those ones that have fallen into more severe disrepair. Same thing with things like retaining walls and fencing and that type of thing. I believe the retaining walls at Evergreen are being looked at for FY27 or 28 so we'll be looking to access cemetery trust money in one of those 2 years for wall repairs out at Evergreen. And as far as that area in the back, that is right now, that's refuse from when we excavate for a new occupant, and we need some place to put the dirt. But yeah, that area will be prepared for future burials as it's needed. So all the areas within the cemetery, within all three of our active cemeteries that are currently underutilized and kind of used as back of the house areas, those, eventually the bell will toll for us and we'll need some space. So, eventually all the space within the cemeteries will be utilized for burials. But we do have many decades in front of us as far as capacity.
Very good. And let's see. Cemetery fund. Then summer programming. I know. Can you tell me a little bit about summer programming in Alston Brighton? If there's any plans to do any summer programming in the parks in Alston Brighton?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that, Councillor. We had so Liz Sullivan, who oversees external affairs and programming, was at the coffee hour and did not make the trip back in.
Okay. Yeah.
But we can get you details. Obviously, the guide is out in terms of where programs are located, and the hiring is underway in terms of looking for youth and adults to support.
So there's a parks guide, or is it? I know BCYF has a summer guide.
Yeah, there's a summer parks guide that we can make sure your office has.
That'd be wonderful, because we want to promote what's happening, and we also want to make sure that Alston Brighton, we have a lot of kids that seem to be undercounted and unrecognized in the neighbourhood, so we want to make sure we have some robust programming in the neighbourhood for our kids in Alston Brighton.
And at the Alston Brighton Coffee Hour, which I don't think has happened yet, we do have specific sheets for those neighborhoods specifically. So in addition to the full summer guide, we've then digested it down into neighborhood specific so that you can take away just what's happening in your neighborhood.
That'd be great. Is it possible to send us over an electronic copy of that? We can disperse it through the neighborhood as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. How am I doing for time, Mr. Chair? I'm good?
One more question.
One more question.
Yes.
I'm back to the Evergreen Cemetery again. It's a Civil War era cemetery, and I thank you for, there was a few dead trees that have been removed, and that's been very, very helpful. I'm just wondering about, grave markers and gravestones that have toppled over. Is there a program to get them reset up again, or how is that taken care of?
If there are headstones that you see that have fallen over, please let us know. Our staff, they do reset them as needed, and usually they need heavy equipment to do that. And I'm not sure in Evergreen, but I know in Mount Hope and in Fairview they work with some various veterans groups as well to care for a lot of those veterans headstones that the families may be long gone, or et cetera, to make sure that showing respect to those people, and to keep any weeds and moss and things like that from growing on the headstones. But yeah, if you see a headstone that is that's been toppled over maybe by a tree branch or something like that, please let us know via either an email or via 311, and our staff will address it immediately.
Very good. And we have our Veterans Day ceremony over there every year, and it's so everyone, there'll be a crowd over there, so it'd be nice to show it off in all its glory. So thank you so much. That's all I had. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor. The chair recognizes Councillor Pepin. Councillor, you have the floor.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
Okay. I have two follow-up questions. One of them is regarding Sprague Pond in Hyde Park. I know that it's now considered a great pond as of 2022. And I know that there's been some projects for renovating it or making the access to it easier for residents, especially there's a big development happening across from the pond near the Reedville station. And I know that just a lot more foot traffic is going to be near that area. Do we have plans to, in the near future, to enhance that site? I know that the city owns it.
Yeah, so that site is managed by our Urban Wilds team. So they have done some work since we acquired the property, trying to manage the vegetation. But we also would really like to get our archaeological colleagues in there to do some exploratory work, because we think there's some significance archaeologically there that we want to assess and better understand before we make wholesale changes to the site with the Urban Wilds team. So we haven't had a chance to, that's not scheduled yet as far as I know. You don't know of anything scheduled. So as soon as that is scheduled, so it's kind of managing it, but not making major changes until we better understand the archaeology.
Okay. Archaeology folks, as hopefully you've seen if you follow them on Instagram, have been very busy on digs associated with the 250th. So they're over in Charlestown now doing some awesome digs that I invite people to follow and check out.
That would be great. And maybe some of your team is aware, there's some residents in that specific area that are very vocal about their pond and the beautification of it. So it's good to get back to them with those updates. So if there's anything that in the near future that you can share that's happening regarding Sprague Pond, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And then the last thing that I have is, I know that you guys mentioned a shadow study, I think it was, and I wanted to know, have you ever considered doing a flood study as well? Not necessarily how we think about like near the coast of that's important, obviously that's massively important, but also like our inland parks where, like I mentioned earlier, some of the baseball diamonds in Ross Field flood, Healy Field as well. I heard that Healy Field is being considered by Boston Water and Sewer as like a catchment area for future projects. Have you guys looked into that?
So Boston Water and Sewer Commission is well underway through a citywide inundation flood model that takes into account increased precip. They are addressing things as they come up as well, and they're well aware of areas of the neighborhood that flood. oftentimes when our parks are flooding, there are issues with street.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose audio?
Yeah, am I frozen or are they frozen?
I think they're frozen.
I think it might be on their end.
Can you hear us?
Oh, now
Yes,
it's
we're back.
Yep.
And so I think that so yes, and so localized, certainly every park that we're redesigning in terms of Kathy's team and our chief of landscape architecture is looking at, what are the flood problems, both current and then foreseeable in the future with sort of larger inundation events, and how do we design our parks not only to deal with the rainwater on site, but potentially if there are neighborhood challenges, how do we actually absorb some of that neighborhood challenge in the park if it makes sense to do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that made me think about one more question. So thank you for that. Kathy, maybe this is a question for you. If, let's say that there's a project in queue for a capital project, like I'm going to use Healy Field. Let's say there's a community group like the Friends of Healy or Healy to Cummins. They want to apply for a community preservation grant to help pay for the modifications. Can that be used in partnership with whatever funds the Parks Department may provide, or does it have to be one or the other? How does that work?
It can be either or both. I think the timing is the one thing that we want to think about. So when a community applies to the CPA for funding, the funding comes to the department for the department to lead the project. So we need to dedicate a project manager to that project. So that can sometimes be a challenge, especially if we're short-staffed.
Yeah.
So in the past few years, we have been trying to prioritize supporting projects that already have a project manager assigned to them so that it's an additive project. So that we have city capital funding and we also receive CPA funding. It's adding to the overall project budget. We can do more together and then we can deliver both projects at the same time. But we do also have some projects that are solely funded by CPA, and we have a project manager staff to assign, is working on that project where it's only CPA funded.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm probably going to give you a heads up that there's probably going to be a community group applying for Healy Field specifically. So maybe I can connect them to you. You might know them already too. So just maybe
they did receive funding for the community garden.
Yes.
Several years ago. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, but now they're going for like the bigger the Healy Field.
Yeah. If they can reach out to me earlier, rather than early in the summer rather than late in the summer, that usually gives me a little bit more time so we can craft the project together and make sure it's something that we can support.
Deal. I'll make sure to connect everyone via email then.
Great.
Thank you. Again, just thank you so much to the entire department for the work you do. I really do appreciate the collaboration that our offices have. Nate, I just want to say thank you publicly again for helping with the Mattapan Patriots trailer. You guys were great. They still
we're never going to talk about that again.
They still mention it to this day, so thank you. Again, just really appreciative of the department. Well, that's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Couple questions on my end is, I'll start off with parking. Our parks are becoming extremely popular, and I love it. I love to see our parks activated. Our parks are also in the middle of neighborhoods, and one of the things that I hear residents bring up often is when our parks are activated, you have football, you have baseball, you might have rugby all happening at the same time. It causes parking concerns. And around one of the fields, Robert Love Field, there are two schools, right? There's Tech Boston Academy and then the Lee Academy. Are we able to collaborate with those the BPS on offering parking, and then communicate that to the organizers on saying, hey, if you're using this field, please also use the parking that's available at the school. And then on top of that, there will also be the need of cleaning. So maybe creating an MOU with Public Works or the park departments to make sure that after, like on the weekend, that the parking lot are then also clean.
I think that's something permitting can work with BPS on to make sure that that when we're permitting a park that's close to a school, that overflow parking can try to go into an empty school parking lot first before it goes into the neighborhood. Yeah, that's something we can certainly work with BPS operations on.
Awesome. And I'll definitely talk offline on Robert Love Field and seeing if we can help make that a possibility there.
Great.
And I will also love a copy of the Summer Parks Guide. If you could forward that to me as well, I would love to amplify all the great work that the department is doing and the programs that the department is offering. If any counselors have any other questions, please raise your hand, your virtual hand. All right, seeing no hands being raised, no additional public individuals sign up for public testimony. Just want to again thank the entire cabinet and the department. Thank the entire cabinet and department for all the work that you do and always being responsive. I was going to start to list names of people within the cabinet, but I feel like I'll get myself in trouble. But shout out to everyone that in the department again that just works closely with my office on a whole host of improvements and concerns that residents have. I want to thank my team, my counselors, my council colleagues and their team. I want to thank central staff and also IGR. And again, thank you to everyone who lent their voice to this conversation during public listening session. And then with that said, the hearing on dockets number 0822 through 0830 is adjourned.